in transition, because we have some real estate professionals here and we also have some attorneys in the house. I guess let's get started with introductions. Some of these ladies I'm just meeting for the first time, but we have remotely, we have Sharon McNamara with Boston Connect Real Estate. Good morning, Sharon. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning to everybody. So glad that everybody could make it there.
Yep. And so the plan for this morning is that we're gonna be here for a marathon show this morning. So our 2 hours, and then we're gonna go right into talk real estate roundtable with Sharon McNamara for the next hour. So we're gonna have lots of stuff to talk about this morning, but plenty of opinions here in studio, and we'll be all good. We also have Wallace with Boston Connect Real Estate as well. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. She was here bright and early setting up all the social media things.
Yeah, so we'll be live on Facebook too.
Great.
We are live now, by the way.
Oh, great.
Yep.
All right, so let's go through some introductions. So we have Amy Hubert Masferrer, Esquire, who's a real estate attorney with Sherman Law. I'll give you guys a moment to give backgrounds and stuff like that, but let me just introduce all of you. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
We also have Erin, Nally, Esquire, who's an estate planning attorney with Starboard Legal. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Allison Walsh, Esquire, who's a family law attorney with Walsh Law Office. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so I guess Amy, we'll start with you. Do you guys? I'm just meeting these ladies for the first time, so it's great to thanks for joining us. Look forward to getting to know you in the discussion this morning. Do you want to just take a minute or so to just a little introduction, if you want to do a background of your practice, your experience, et cetera, whatever you want to share this morning so our listeners can get to know you.
Sure, absolutely. So this is Amy Hubert Masferrer. I'm from Sherman Law. I'm a real estate attorney with over 20 years experience. I focus on all things real estate. And, in addition, I've been contributing lately, kind of focusing on transitional sales as we see a lot of listings come from situations. I, have a certain background in divorce because I am divorced. So life experience helps for sure. But, I really enjoy working with particularly families and trying to get them kind of in the right place after difficult times.
Great. Thank you. Allison, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Walsh. I'm a family law and divorce attorney. My office is in Hingham. I grew up on the South Shore, so I'm very familiar actually with even Marshfield. Grew up spending my summers here.
Okay.
And I've been practicing for 20 years at firms in Boston and the South Shore. I've been on my own for about 6 years now. And regularly deal also with, between my divorce practice with real estate and, financial issues. And so hopefully this will be, I'm looking forward to hopefully learning something today as well as teaching somebody something.
Sure, well, yeah. And where's your office, Allison?
My office is in Hingham.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And where was yours, Amy?
Hingham. We also have a second location in Plymouth as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. And Erin, how about you?
Good morning. My name is Erin Nally. I am the founding attorney of Starboard Legal. I'm in a business and estate planning attorney. My office is in Norwell, right at Assinippie Corner. I have over 50 years of experience in both private and public sector. And my primary focus now is, like I said, all on business planning and estate planning matters.
Yeah. And how did you ladies meet? Have you known each other for a while, or did you just meet at that class that Sharon was talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Allie and I actually went to high school together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we kind of reconnected because of Amy, who wanted to do this presentation on transitional or life-changing real estate, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that was how the three of us got connected.
yes.
And
So we've known each other since we were 14.
Amazing.
Shout out to Notre Dame.
I met Erin first through like a networking event, and like we hit it off right away. And I'm like, oh, we're like the same person at this point. And then I was like, I kept hearing about Allison Walsh, and I was trying to find, I get a lot of calls for people who need divorce attorneys. Your name kept coming up. It's excellent. So I'm like, I have to meet this woman. And then I was like, do you guys know each other? And like, yeah, we do. So it was fantastic. And it's been a really great, to get to know them personally and as well as professionally. So all good things.
I wondered where the topic came from. I know Sharon had mentioned she went to a class and that's where she met you ladies. I wondered where the topic came from. Homes in transition, which I think is an excellent topic, and we can approach it from many different angles. But so you guys have already sort of given a similar
Yeah.
talk before.
Yeah, so I was really trying to think about how, I'm very big into education, especially with my realtors. For me, I was seeing where the market was frozen a little bit for a brief time period, though we've seen more inventory. Yay, keep selling. What was going on the market were people who had to sell because of situations. Those transitional sales are more difficult for the realtors, for sure. So I was looking for ways to support them to not be afraid of those transactions and to get the right team around them, so they had both the legal and sometimes emotional support to kind of support their clients.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my my thought process at that time. I'm always looking to do a different type of class. Obviously, I have some experience in divorce personally and professionally, and so that was important to me.
Yeah. Sharon, anything you want to share before we kind of dive into topics? I mean, this was sort of your idea to put this marathon show together this morning. So
Yeah, so Amy's great about always wanting to help the realtors, and me being the broker owner of a company, I always want my agents learning as well. So anytime she has anything, she always invites us. We adore Amy. Amy actually, Casey actually worked with Amy very closely when she was doing her internship while she was in law school.
okay.
So yeah, and Amy loved Casey and Casey loved Amy. So
Well, let's not live there. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So Amy had this class, and she had, our other two guests here with us. She also had a loan officer, but I just thought, okay, we could make a joke out of it, like three attorneys, a loan officer, 2 real estate agents, and a financial planner. What? So, but honestly, Alyssa, you and I are always trying to do shows too, like when we do our 3-hour marathons. And when I watched them and they taught me so much, I learned a lot that day too. I thought that you would actually be just such a great fit for what they're doing as well. And thinking back to when we used to do financially secure women.
Yeah.
It sort of, I felt like all the pieces went together, and it is definitely something that we're seeing a lot more of. I mean, myself, I'd say most of my transactions that I've been doing as of late this year have been estate sales, or not even estate sales yet. Like they're in assisted living, but the parent hasn't deceased yet. I'm seeing a lot of that. So lots of moving pieces to it. So
Yeah.
I know we have the three women who can help us with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's dive in and start talking about the issues surrounding divorce and transition related to divorce. And I guess just to back it up a little, when I work with divorcees, it's much more common than I would work with the female member of the couple. I don't know what you ladies are seeing, but I was at a conference a week or two ago, and there was a presentation on financial topics surrounding divorce and planning for that. And he had some statistics, and I don't know the exact study or whatever, but there was some survey done not long ago about, with divorcing couples, which member of the couple would be more likely to seek, in this particular instance, financial guidance, during and post divorce. Ooh, I almost lost my coffee there, and it's totally full. That would have been a bummer because we're here for a long time. And the statistic was crazy. It was like, what percentage of women would seek out financial advice during and post divorce? And it was like 75% of women, would seek out professional advice. And I think it was like 15% of men. And I certainly see that in my practice, where I'm generally, I can't recall a situation where I had a man come to me for financial advice specifically post-divorce. I certainly have a lot of male clients, and whether single or married, but specifically during and post-divorce, I'm generally sought out by the female member of the couple. What do you ladies see? Is it a common pattern or?
Absolutely. I still think that, things fall into kind of traditional gender roles still during marriages. And, I consider myself an educated person. That being said, my husband at the time handled the finances, and so they're coming into awareness of what they have to handle and what their planning is. And certainly I think that we tend to see that for a lot of times, one person in the couple, and typically it can be the man in a traditional marriage, runs all the bills, runs all the invoices, all of those things. And people don't really have a full understanding of what they have and what they don't have.
Yeah.
And, a common preempt of divorce is people kind of living outside their means, which causes conflict in the marriage. So that can be, another kind of reason why there's just not mutual financial understanding between the two parties.
Yeah. Do you find that, Allison? Is it still, I mean, you read the statistics about causes of divorce and financial issues still tend to be a leading cause of couples divorcing?
Yeah, I would say, I guess in my practice, I think financial issues for sure. I see, and I mean, this is an unfortunate sort of statement on society, but substance abuse, I think in the last
wow.
10
Yeah.
years or so has
Okay.
really, a lot of our divorces unfortunately have
Okay.
some sort of, unfortunately like alcoholism or something like that
Yeah.
component to it. Gambling addictions. And especially I think with COVID too, when everybody was stuck in the house together, one thing
yeah.
trend that we saw was I think a lot of people had learned how to sort of coexist by, having a girls' night out once a week, or the guys would go out. And so people were staying married by not spending that much time together.
Mm.
And then when they were suddenly forced to be in the house together for like 2 years straight,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
that was something I had not seen before. And, so we're kind of cycling through that now too. To Amy's point about kind of women seeking out advice more during the divorce, I think I do see that. I think especially women that, were traditionally maybe like a stay-at-home mom or something, they
Yeah.
oftentimes are really looking for sort of a financial advisor or somebody to help them get on their feet
Yeah.
afterwards. I think also the other piece with the divorce is a lot of times in the divorce, both parties might have had the same financial advisor, and then in the divorce, one party keeps the financial advisor. I mean, that's not like in the divorce agreement or in
Yeah.
the divorce judgment, but
Yeah.
sort of maybe it was the husband's buddy or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So now if I have the wife as a client, she's kind of coming to me saying, hey, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah.
Same thing with insurance agents, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting how in the divorce, the professionals
it.
in your life kind of go one way or the other sometimes. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times people are looking for referrals
Yeah.
post-divorce.
I also think like we're going to talk about, part of the subject matter for today is real estate in transition as a result of many things, but divorce being one of them. And when it comes to real estate, like if you would think in a traditional marriage where there are children, it seems to me that it's more common that the female member of the couple, the mom, would want to keep the home and keep the children in the home. So then, maybe seeking out advice related to that and affordability of that probably seems to be, I would guess, more common. Can I afford to stay here? What's the impact of that in my life, et cetera? And we can kind of talk all through that. Erin, anything you see or in terms of
as far as who typically reaches out,
Yeah.
on my end, it's typically the woman that would
Yeah.
reach out because my work is all directions. Oddly
Okay.
enough. So
Oh.
Yes, right.
But you know what I mean? Like when it
Yeah.
comes to estate planning, there's no real instant gratification for it.
Okay.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? It's
yeah.
sort of like if something happens, then where are the directions that we follow?
Okay.
So
Right.
usually I will
It's
have
planning. Yeah. So it's,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
exactly.
And women sometimes are better planners. Not always, but
Right.
yeah,
And
sometimes.
guardianship.
Well,
right?
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
a big
exactly.
concern because if, your backup plans were that the in-laws were going to raise the kids and if someone, if everyone predeceases,
Mhm.
suddenly the in-laws are not your in-laws anymore. So,
Yeah.
those considerations you have to think about too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about, we wanted to focus on homes in transition and real estate issues surrounding divorce. So like I touched on a moment ago, it seems to be pretty common that if the divorcing couple has kids, especially young kids, then one member of the couple wants to keep the house. But are you maybe Sharon and Melissa could chime in regarding the clients that you're seeing going through divorce. Are they selling the home because they can't afford it, because they want a life change and a fresh start? I can recall several conversations with particularly females going through divorce and, talking through affordability of keeping the family home. And sometimes it's unrealistic financially, and, or maybe there's a financial sacrifice in the near term, and then they have to pay for it on the back end later, retire later, work harder later, et cetera. And sometimes people are okay with that, and that's a decision that they can make. But, if you think about just most people, most married couple, like dual income families, right, are there. I don't think it's incredibly common that there's enough financial resources that while they were married that they could just afford another home, right? Most couples are just, they're trying to make it work on either one income or two incomes. And so in a divorce, like the affordability of then just all of a sudden maintaining two homes it's sometimes just the numbers don't work. And that would oftentimes lead to discussions about real estate sales, et cetera, and or how to handle that. So Sharon, do you,
Yeah,
a lot of
so
clients? Yeah.
So for us, I think that, with having a lot of divorce, and as Allison was saying too, is, we are definitely seeing more divorce because of substance abuse and alcohol and things like that. And I'd say, so I've been selling real estate for 21 years now, that I wonder if the difference is that from what I'm seeing, it's the women are not putting up with it. And I'm not saying it, just that's who's coming to me too, generally, is the women, not the men. So in some cases, the men will as well, but usually the person that's reaching out to me first is, the woman of the relationship. And they're just saying, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And they're okay to do that. There have been some situations, and I'm sure Allison has some stories, and I know all the ladies, especially Amy, has, I told you she might throw a little comedy in there. So
There's a lot to be had here for sure.
hold on. So Amy will get us there for sure. But, some of the terrible situations I see is, if one of the spouses is having an affair or something like that, sometimes I'm pulled in right after that other spouse finds out. Or is told.
Time to be pulled in.
Yeah, it is
really high. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I have some really vivid memories of sitting at a table, and it's hard, like whoever it is really upset. I tend to see when it's, when the woman finds out that he had been cheating, she's sobbing at the table. But if it's the man who finds out that the woman is cheating, he's always trying to pull me aside, like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was her. It was her. It wasn't me.
I was
right? Yeah.
I'm thinking of a very specific time when that happened. I can remember when this happened.
Yeah. It was, and again, you try to stay neutral. And I think that Allison, you can talk about that too. I think as the real estate agent, and Amy too, all of you actually knowing my role, sometimes it really matters what the divorce is. So I have had situations where, there are restraining orders. So I like the information to be equal, and it works out great for our team because I have Melissa as a team member who's licensed. I have Mary who's licensed as a team member. And it's important for us as a team to always know what the communication is, because I feel like one of them will always try to like sneak off, and tell us everything. We like all communication to be together. If they ever say, please don't tell my other spouse this, it puts us in a really bad situation. And Allison can talk more about that too. But with restraining orders, I've had times where I can't even text husband and wife, soon to be exes, in the same text message. So Allison can talk more about that.
How often are the attorneys involved in these transactions, like before the divorce is final?
Right. So it really, people can kind of sell their house at any point in a divorce. So sometimes people think they have to file for divorce in the courts first. That's not really the case, right? So sometimes I have folks come to me and say, okay, we're getting divorced. We've already put the house on the market. They've, crunch the numbers with their advisor or whatever, and they're just like, neither of us can afford, especially around here, right? I mean, real estate's expensive. So a lot of times they're like, I can't afford the 4-bedroom house. We're both going to have to downsize or whatever it might be. So those usually are a little bit more amicable because they've both kind of come to the, conclusion that neither can afford and we're just going to sell. Oftentimes folks come to me and say, we're getting divorced, and one party or the other wants to keep the house. Sometimes they both want to keep the house. Sometimes they can both afford it because now both people work usually. And so sometimes that's an option that maybe 20 years ago that, oftentimes we didn't see that. And then we, sometimes we have to fight over who's going to keep the house. I find courts are very Solomonic in the sense of they split the baby, right? So if people can't decide who's going to keep the house, I feel like it's sort of a pox on all your houses and the house gets sold a lot of times.
The court would force that.
Because the judge isn't going to decide if both of them have the financing and they both can afford it. Like, how do you decide who gets to keep the house, right? And I think more and more too, we're getting away from the traditional idea of, the stay-at-home mom and they would stay in the house with the children. with everybody working, we see so much more and more like a 50-50 co-parenting. Oftentimes there might be a nanny or right. I mean, the grandparents are involved, right? It's like it takes a village now. So it's like, how do you decide? There's not just sort of a presumption of, okay, well, the kids will stay in the house because mom's going to be there. You know, the parents might, you know, dad might have them more time. Who knows? So so oftentimes if they can't agree on anything, oftentimes that's when stuff starts to get sold.
And is it common that you know, I know that post-divorce, like one spouse can still have ownership in the property. Is it more common to structure it like that? Or is it more common to just like split the equity and one buys out the other? If there's resources, that's easier. But like, how often are there the cash resources for the buyout? Oh, hold on. We might not have time to finish this, but we'll finish it after the break. This is an interesting time to talk about that because with interest rates so high and one spouse having to cash out, refi to buy out the other spouse, this is a crazy, horrible time to do that with interest rates where they are now. So I just was wondering, like, maybe it was more common in the last decade or so for cash out, refi buyouts, but I wonder if this interest rate environment is going to change that. And then one spouse, retains equity in the home post-divorce. Like, is that common at all for equity for ownership to still be joint post-divorce?
It's not that common. What we usually see when we see that, and especially if it's ordered by the court, the idea is usually to get the kids through high school. Okay. So it's a short-term fix. To kind of jointly, if one party or the other can't buy out, and you've got a kid that's in the 10th grade already, you don't want to uproot them if they've been in that school system. Let's, for 3 years, kind of, for lack of a better word, suck it up and cooperate and continue to own this property together, get the kid to graduate, and then figure it out at that point. Okay. Maybe we'll continue on that after the break, but we just, we have to take a short break, ladies. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. Full house this morning. Sharon McNamara with Boston Connect Real Estate, Amy Hubert Masferrer, real estate attorney with Sherman Law, Erin Nally, estate planning attorney with Starboard Legal, Allison Walsh, family law attorney with Walsh Law Office. We're talking about transitions in life, homes in transition, stuff surrounding divorce, and we'll get into death, etc. We're just taking a quick break and we'll be right back.
Can you guys still hear me? I wonder if they can still hear me.
Are you ready to get organized? Let's consolidate those old accounts and make sure your investment strategies are appropriate. This is Kirk Reed, a certified financial planner with McNamara Financial in Marshfield. Find out more at McNamaraFinancial.com.
This is Mike McNamara. We think that your financial advisor should be a certified financial planner practitioner. This is the gold standard for financial advisors. We also think your advisor should be a fiduciary and always act in your best interest. That would describe Justin, Alyssa, Kirk, and myself. We are a family business. When it comes to your money and financial affairs, we think our family can help your family. In Marshfield, call us at 781-834-2010 or McNamaraFinancial.com.
Hi, this is Alyssa Reed with McNamara Financial in Marshfield. Your investment strategy should largely be determined by the amount of time you have before needing the money. If you are aggressively invested, time is your friend when it comes to your portfolio recovering from this scary stock market. If you need your invested money soon, it should have been conservative to begin with. If you're not sure how your money is invested, I'd be happy to offer my opinion. 781-834-2010.
Hi, this is Mike McNamara. How do you find a financial advisor that you can trust and will take good care of you? Not easy. We would suggest that you listen to McNamara on Money here on WATD Saturday mornings at 8 and Sunday mornings at 7:30. It's an easy way to get to know a family of 4 financial advisors who are also certified financial planner practitioners. Call us in Marshfield at 781-834-2010 or McNamaraFinancial.com.
Hi, this is Alyssa McNamara Reed. Bear with me as we need a little compliance disclosure. In our practice, we give financial advice to our clients. We know their financial situation in detail before doing so. That's generally not the case with callers we speak to on the show. We can't give truly meaningful financial advice because we don't know the detailed financial situation of the caller. We just met. Any suggestions we make to callers are generic in nature and meant to steer the caller in the right direction. Callers should check with their own financial professionals before implementing any suggestions that we may make. At times on this show, we talk about investments and investment performance. Investment returns are not guaranteed, and past performance does not guarantee future results.
And we're back. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. We're talking about transitionary periods in life this morning, homes in transition, real estate discussions surrounding transitions in life, divorce, et cetera. Maybe we'll get into second marriages, death of a spouse or a parent and things like that. I don't know if we're going to have time to get to all this stuff because I know 3 hours might not be enough for all of us to get through. There's a lot of opinions flying around.
Let's try the 3 hours first, and then we can see who's after
We're
our
still,
show.
we're still say, is 3 hours enough to cover a lifetime? of events?
We're still going to be on divorce 3
Let's
hours
wrap up
from
this
now.
divorce in 3 hours. Can you imagine?
All right, so I'll do briefly intros again. So we have Sharon McNamara and Melissa Wallace from Boston Connect Real Estate. BostonConnect.com.
Yeah.
What's your website? Oh,
Yeah,
website,
BostonConnect.com.
BostonConnect.com. We have Amy Hubert Masferrer, who's a real estate attorney with Sherman Law. What's your website, Amy?
It's actually timshermanlaw.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have Allison Walsh, who's a family law attorney with Walsh Law Office. And what's your
It's
what's it?
AllisonWalshLaw.com. Allison with 2 L's, 1 I.
Okay. Do some people have 2 I's in Allison?
I've seen Allison spelled. I've seen it spelled with a
I've never
C
seen
and
that
a
one.
Y, and
As a real
yeah.
estate attorney, I can say
I
there
don't-
are many spellings.
It was a popular 70s name. Yes,
I
no
see.
direct spelling.
And then we also have Erin Nally, who's an estate planning attorney with Starboard Legal. And what's your
StarboardLegal.com.
Starboard Legal? Is it? I never knew if it was Starboard or Starboard
Well, now you know.
because I don't have a boat.
Aren't you glad you did the show? Now you know.
Starboard,
Starboard.
like bird, like
Yeah.
starboard, even though it's spelled differently. Okay, got it. All right, we were talking a little bit about, we were talking about, when one spouse wants to keep the family home, a divorcing couple, and if let's say one of them can agree to keep the family home. You mentioned, of course, sometimes they can't agree, maybe nobody wants it, et cetera. But if someone wants it, and there's significant equity in a home, and we were talking about how, if there aren't other cash, non-retirement cash resources for one spouse to buy out the other spouse from the home, cash out refinance would generally be an option if the spouse can qualify for the higher mortgage, et cetera. Having said that, it's a terrible time to cash out
Right.
refinance with interest rates double or triple what someone probably has on their existing mortgage. And so I was just wondering, how common it is for a couple to for one member of the couple to delay their equity buyout of the property. It seems to me that it's probably pretty common. And you were saying maybe just for like a short period of time to get the kids through school. It does limit the other spouse's options, right? If that
Right.
spouse doesn't have the cash resources to then buy their next home, maybe then they're renting for a period of time, or, can we talk through that a little bit in terms of the stress on an already stressful situation as a result of that, or, what are options that you throw out there to people to handle that?
Yeah. So I think typically when we sort of see the concept of one party wants to do a cash buyout or a cash out buyout, the court likes to sort of keep a short leash on that unless there's some extenuating circumstance. Like I said before the break, the child in high school that's only got a couple years left or something.
Yeah.
So usually what we'll see is sort of time frames, can you qualify in, 90 days? Can you qualify, if you get rejected in 90 days, then try again in another 90 days or whatever. You don't typically see more than about a year or so, unless the parties agree. If the parties agree and they say, hey, we've, occasionally people do get along, right? And they might be able to creatively figure something out, but, kind of without some sort of agreement. And again, when we have an agreement like that, oftentimes it does involve the financial planner who sits down and says, this just doesn't make a lot of sense. But if people are kind of at loggerheads about stuff, it's usually you're talking about a year or so to kind of watch the rates. So in the last year, that's been a problem because I've had divorces that when they started, we figured, okay, cash buyout. And now people can't qualify with the interest rates because it was going to be tight, at 3%. And now there's no way. Right? Yeah.
Right.
So that's tough. And then you see houses having to get put on the market sometimes because of that.
Alyssa, that's one of the things too. I was texting Melissa too. One of the things, it's interesting because we've been talking about such low inventory lately, right? So this is like an issue. So people would think, oh, if you're working with a lot of divorced couples, at least you're bringing on more inventory. Well, it's the opposite. Now we're selling one house and we have 2 people looking for housing.
Right.
So it's really impacting but low inventory. There's so many factors that are impacting it, but that makes it even a little more difficult, especially when we are thinking about the rates, you're thinking about multiple offers. And Amy, you see this like the end part of this, right? Like people are paying $100,000 in some cases. We saw up to $200,000 over asking.
Right.
So it's hard to do in a divorce situation, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing. I mean, if you have if you have one party who's saying like, look, let's maximize the value out of the house right now, we're at all-time highs for purchase price.
Yeah.
But then you have the two parties who have to also purchase
Right.
with high interest rates and low inventory, kind of navigating through that. So, we've seen people who have had more growth in the equity of their house than perhaps they have been contributing to the retirement, which I know you'll speak on. So we
Yeah.
don't have those tradable assets anymore. When the court is looking at something, they're saying, okay, well, you have $500,000 in equity. You want to hold on to the house. Where are we going? What's the other asset that's going to be the trade-off
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah.
And those other assets haven't had the same sort of boom growth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really a challenging time. And, really, like I said, getting the right team to be able to make decisions, kind of keeping level heads prevailing, hopefully, to make the best decision for the family at this point. Because it, like we said, it might say like, okay, yes, you can get the highest value, but now you're both out looking at housing
Yeah.
market, and you're going to
What's that
lose
like?
some of that value.
Yeah.
You have to realize if there's children involved, the parents' assets are what's going to be passed on, which I know Erin will talk about. Do we want to liquidate an asset that's going to hold more value than another? And
Yeah.
thinking about that long term.
Yeah. How creative, I guess, Amy, this one would be just directed toward you. Allison, how creative do people get in terms of dividing assets? Like, I guess what I mean by that is like, let's say there's $500,000 in equity in the home, and the only other asset is, $500,000 in a 401k. So there's no cash for a buyout,
Right.
and maybe in cash out refi doesn't, make sense in this environment, this interest rate environment. Like, in my mind, I've helped some amicable couples, I've helped them with number crunching through divorce and things like that. And when I'm working with one member of a couple, of course, I can only approach it from their perspective and what might be fair to you and all that. But I kind of like, a retirement account for someone who's 40, is very different from equity in a home. It's very different from cash. Of course, there's the tax consequences to consider, after tax value versus before tax, value or market value. So I'm just wondering, like, how creative will the courts allow people to get? Like, can someone say in that example, I'll keep the house, he can keep the 401k, and as long as the after-tax values are similar, does the court really care about stuff like that? Or is there someone at the court being like, no, what's your tax bracket? Your tax bracket, is there any
So
judgments in that regard?
The short answer
Yeah.
on that is no.
Okay.
They're not really crunching tax numbers at the
Okay.
courthouse. I can
Yeah.
honestly say that.
Yeah.
Down to the
and
penny.
as the daughter of an accountant, I've got to say I don't like doing that either. I usually bring in outside accountants. So I mean, I think when you have 500,000 in a house and 500,000 in a retirement, if one person walked away with the house and one person walked away with the retirement, I can't think of any judge that would blink at that.
Okay, well, that's not equitable at all.
That was what I wanted at all. I was going to say I wouldn't, depending on which side I'm representing, I might not advise that, right?
Right.
But yeah, we don't. So
Yeah,
I mean, from your perspective, Melissa, you're probably doing sort of, you're looking at the retirement and like projecting it out, going, well, if you retire at 65, how much are you going to have if you can,
Yeah. Right.
The court's not doing that.
Okay.
They're just looking at the numbers and they're saying 500. On its face, what you might hear from a judge would be, well, 500 of a house and 500 of retirement today are not exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because with retirement, if you cashed out today, obviously you're not getting 500.
Right.
You've got
Right.
taxes, penalties,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards. So those are the kinds of comments you get back, as
Okay.
opposed to somebody sitting there crunching it and projecting it out and saying, well, if we invested this at this rate, nobody's really doing that. So
Okay.
people that are smart getting
I would be like, I'll come in with my spreadsheets and
Because you love numbers. You're just like, and you owe me 13 cents.
people
exactly what it's like.
people that are smart sit down and do those kinds of things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Well, she is very smart.
Right. And I think, part of it too is, there's sort of some, I think folks with, equity and things and people that have assets oftentimes do have an advisor and accountants and things
Yeah.
around them. So sometimes that's a little bit easier. We come in with a team already in place, for folks that kind of have a house and a 401k, a lot of times they don't have, that pension through their job. They might
Yeah.
not have those outside people
Yeah.
that they're working with on a regular basis. So,
Yeah.
and they might not have the resources too, right? So, I mean, sometimes we're sort of resource strapped in terms of like, how many people can we hire to look at this case, right? You have to
Yeah.
kind of get a budget at the beginning of,
Yeah.
how much do you want to spend on this?
So obviously this is, exponentially easier when the members of the couple are cooperative, right, and can agree on things. And I
Right.
guess, do you do mediation at all?
I
too, or
do,
you
yeah.
just do?
I'm a
Okay.
certified mediator.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
as
Yeah.
well.
I guess I was just curious, like how, like if a couple agrees on, a division of assets during the divorce, I guess my question was, is a judge like making calls on that, or if there's an agreement, they're going to approve the divorce and because the parties agree? I mean, is it? Yeah.
I mean, if you have two
I guess it depends.
attorneys,
It depends.
it
Yeah,
really
it
depends.
depends.
It has to. So
That's a good attorney
I
answer.
know.
It
It
depends.
depends.
Yeah.
I know. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, if you have two lawyers on the case, I feel like there's usually a pretty good chance it's getting
Yeah,
approved.
I'm
Because
yeah.
they figure,
Okay.
everybody's had legal advice. Everybody's,
Yeah.
sat down and at least run the numbers. The standard to get a divorce agreement through and get it approved is that it's fair and reasonable, basically.
Yeah.
So what does that mean though? Right. And that means different things depending on how long the marriage is. So 7-year marriage, what's fair and reasonable might be that if somebody owned the house before the marriage, they're going to walk away with the
Oh,
equity
interesting.
that they had before, right?
Okay.
That might be considered fair and reasonable because it was a short marriage.
Okay.
A lot of times in a short marriage, people don't even end up joining accounts now.
Right.
We see,
Right,
people
right,
are
right.
only
Right.
married a couple of years. They just keep their own retirement. They keep their own
Yeah.
checking account, and that's, you kind of walk away.
Yeah.
What's fair in a 12-year marriage with a couple of kids? That's where we start to see
Yeah.
50-50 on the
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
50-50 of the retirement that was accumulated during the marriage, but maybe there's a carve out if there was a significant amount before, right? And then once you get up into like the 18, 19, 20, 20 plus, forget it. That's 50-50 down the line. It
Yeah.
really doesn't.
Okay.
I mean,
It is,
if you're really far off of that one way or the other, I mean, a few percentage points, okay, but you're very rarely going to see something that, for some reason a judge is like, oh, well, this is a 25-year marriage and one party really should get 70%. I mean, that would be extraordinary.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
Erin, let's loop you in a little bit on these discussions. Like, divorce is very
Hold on one
common.
sec. Hold on one sec. I have questions.
Oh,
Sorry.
are you here?
Just while we're-
I thought you were in Edgartown on the boat.
I'm still here, but we didn't make it to Edgartown because of the rain.
Oh, you
We
didn't?
are still,
Oh, okay.
no, but we are still on the boat. Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
down at our marina. But anyways, I had a couple questions for Allison because in the few that will probably stem over to Amy too is at what point do you, when they're looking for the value of the house, right? So at what point do you suggest that people are doing that? And do you ever see that as a sort of a conflict because they're like, I'm not using her because she likes you better? At what, if they can't agree, do you suggest somebody? And then Amy, at what point do you think it's important for you as the real estate attorney to come in? Because your role a lot of times is like as they're under agreement already. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
so I guess the first question was if they can't agree on the value of a house, Sharon?
Yeah.
Handle that? Sure. So oftentimes at the beginning of a case, both sides will get a CMA, right, with competitive
Yeah.
market analysis, which is sort of typical. You can call your
Okay.
favorite real estate agent
Yeah.
and have them run some numbers and kind of give you an idea of what the house is worth. CMAs are useful, right, to sort of start the process and think about, is there going to be a cash out buyout, or are we going to sell or whatever? But if things get contentious and you end up having to go to court, the courts don't really put a
Oh.
lot of credibility into the CMAs. I mean, the numbers usually aren't that far off, but they want a certified appraisal.
Okay.
So if you're going to end up, let's put it this way, if people aren't agreeing on prices out of the gate, the first step would be to see if you could agree on getting, a joint person, right? Somebody that you both agree to do an appraisal of the house, and that will be the number.
Okay.
Sometimes we can't even agree on that. So sometimes we have two independent appraisers go in, and then we have a battle of the appraisers. And
God.
that can be, it can be everybody sits down and kind of like maybe splits the baby and comes up with a number in the middle. And sometimes we end up putting the appraisers on the stand and trying to pick apart what they did and the
Oh
comps.
wow.
And then we let the judge decide
Okay.
what the number is. And
Yeah.
What's an appraisal these days? $400 or $500, or is it more?
No,
Has
it's like,
inflation crept up on me, and I'm
it ranges. I've seen anywhere recently from like 500 up to on a single family home, like 800. And then
wow.
if you're talking commercial property, it can get into the
Okay.
thousands.
okay. Yeah. What was the second part of that question? When do we?
And
Amy?
when does Amy get in?
Yeah.
And also too, if we could hit upon, what about people who don't get married? Because there's a lot of people that do that too. So they're not married, but they've been together for 20 years. So maybe we can hit
Right,
upon that.
right. We can definitely talk about like cohabitation agreements
Mhm.
and things to think about with that. So, to your question, when should I get involved? for me, I always want to get involved the sooner the better. If they've agreed on an agent and they're moving forward with marketing, it sometimes helps to kind of bring me in to kind of like seal that deal, because typically in these situations, the realtor's coming in, there's some relationship with one party more than the other, right?
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
not unusual. So if I can kind of come in and be like, look, I represent both of you, we can talk about the challenges of that.
Mm.
That sometimes gives them some peace of mind to move forward with the transaction, creating a little bit more neutrality in that regard, because they're kind of meeting me at the same time. And
Yeah.
that's very important for me, is that I'm meeting them at the same time. I'm not having one call and then being like, oh, your wife reached out to me, want to know if that. I like to have to be introduced at the same time, have conversations, let them know that, my job is to represent both of them through this transaction. And what that means is that I'm not going to be sharing information that don't tell me anything that I can't tell the other person,
Right.
and for lack of a better word, because I have the attorney hat on and they know that I have certain oaths that I have to, sometimes that settles them down a little bit. So it can be beneficial to the agent as well, for sure.
It's interesting that you just said that when you are reaching out, or somebody reaches out to you, or you reach out to the person. I know, at least with Sharon and Mary, a lot of the times they're the ones doing the introduction with the
Yep.
attorney. So if they don't already have an attorney, Sharon will give, a list of, Sharon and Mary will give a list of attorneys and just say, these are the ones that we generally work with.
Right.
And once they're like, okay, yeah, we'll go with whatever, usually we'll go with whatever you suggest, because you've been in
Right.
this business for over 20 years. And Sharon and Mary usually do the introduction. So it's interesting that you said that the people usually reach out to you.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
I'll have perhaps that name has been given to them.
Yeah.
One person reaches out sooner than the
Mhm.
other. So I
Is
love
it to get a leg up on the other one?
It can be. It can be.
That would be me. I'd be like, hi, are you awake at 4:00 in the morning?
Exactly. And listen, everyone has their own divorce story. I always joke that I have my own. I've printed pamphlets. I can hand it out. You guys can review it at your leisure. And it is a story that you carry with, and I'm sensitive to that. Everyone has their own experience in their marriage, and there is going to be that venting. There's going to be that. And, in those situations, you have to listen, not land. You can't be like, well, I don't really care about that, because no one feels good about that. Right. But, you're constantly redirecting. Well, let's talk about, as I say, you're going to Oprah it. You're going to be like, well, let's talk about how we're moving forward. Let's talk about how, this is the opportunity for you to kind of get a restart. Obviously this seems like, you're not in a good position there now. Let's get you into a good position, and kind of trying to pivot without saying, I hear you, sister.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm holding your hand through this.
Yeah, as you are sitting there are moments when you ought to be like, I get it.
What a
I
dog.
get, yeah, exactly. Right. Let's, but that isn't your job. Your job is, and once you realize to them that the most important thing, and sometimes because I've gone through this process, I can speak to that. The most important thing at the end of the day is that you leave us as whole as possible with your two legs under you. And that's my job. And, that's my hope. So, kind of redirecting that to the future. The emotions only escalate things for sure.
When a couple is getting divorced, I guess my question would be for you is, they want to sell, they both want to sell, but is it ever really suggested, depending on when they purchase the home, to go back to the agent that they used because they've already both worked with that person?
Yeah, we see that. Sometimes that's the person that they can agree upon.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can get a little dicey too, because oftentimes we go to family friends, right? So sometimes it's, sometimes we specifically don't want that because maybe it was the brother-in-law of somebody that sold them the house, and now that's enemy territory, right? Now that's the other side of the family. So but if it's somebody, what I've seen that has worked really well is if it's somebody that was the original agent that maybe was a neighbor and sort of doesn't have a dog in the fight, for lack of a better word, and they're like, oh, we really like her, we still, we both trust her. That can actually be a huge game changer, because if you've got that independent person, even if they don't trust each other, and even if they don't really, maybe even have full faith in the lawyer sometimes, because there are days where they're, everybody's a very high emotion, that, whoever, your realtor is, can be that person that can be the calming influence and can get it over.
Alice, Allison, sorry, it's hard for me to just jump in here and I cut everybody off. I'm sorry about that.
No,
But,
it's okay, Sharon.
you know, my question too is, a lot of times I'll have people, you know, if money is sort of tighter and I say, well, I want to introduce you to Amy. She's a real estate attorney. There's always somebody who's like, well, we're going to agree to use one of our divorce attorneys. Like, do you ever let them know that that's probably not a good idea? I mean, because not all divorces are terrible, but do you say, oh, you need a real estate attorney? Because I don't like working with divorce attorneys for real estate. And
Right.
I
No, because
thank
we
God I
don't know
don't
what
do
we're
that.
doing, right? I mean, you know, and I actually say that like as I graduated law school in 2004, so that was the height of the real estate refi boom, right? And so that's what I was going to do. Like my 2003, my summer internship was real estate, and we were all going to make a fortune, right, doing real estate. And then I did it for summer, and I learned that I hated easements, and I never wanted to do them again. So yeah, so there is a reason that I do what I do, and I don't do real estate. So I send folks that are dealing with real estate transactions to people like Amy that do understand easements and know what they're doing. So
I think it's interesting, Amy, what you said a little bit ago regarding you sometimes represent both members of the couple. And obviously you do that, Amy, through when you're working as a mediator, and obviously for estate planning as well, Erin. I think, and I've represented, you know, and of course I work with a lot of couples, and then even through divorce can, you know, work with members of a couple and, you know, be impartial and represent both sides. And I actually think, I don't know what your experiences are, but I think that is like the best situation, because everything is right on the table. Like communication is, I think, better when, you know, when there's not side conversations with one member of the couple. It just seems to me like it's a better situation. There's really nothing being hidden, right? There's no, like I said, side conversations. I think communication is really important through stressful situations, especially a divorce. And so what are your experiences? Like, do you often represent both members of a couple, or is it, you know, I'm sure it's a mixed bag, but do you have any, like, you know, stories of great experiences where, you know, where you're representing both and the communication, you know, helps get through a really tough time? I mean, it just seems to me like that's the way to go.
Absolutely, you know, absolutely. So I do represent both, because I'm very limited to my role. My role is to get the property sold legally to the the buyer.
Yeah.
They are typically supported by their own divorce attorneys, and I am communicating with those divorce attorneys in the moments of conflict.
Yeah.
So you know, sometimes, you know, if I can get them focused on this individual asset and maximizing the value out of it and moving forward, that, you know, I'm not navigating the entire divorce. But, you know, I just had a situation where, you know, I did represent both parties. You know, and this kind of speaks a little bit to the real estate agent. One of the things that we run into sometimes is the relationship building, because one person is typically in the house. The realtor develops more of a relationship with that person, because that's how they're scheduling they're scheduling viewings, open houses, all those things. So typically the other partner is feeling on edge about that. So I'm trying to settle that, to say like, look, here's the agreement. But it can get contentious when we're dealing with, I just had a case where there was a restraining order. I have to schedule when, you know, when the spouse is returning to the property to empty out their property. And there's, you know, you can have some contention where, you know, the day before they'll say, I'm not signing he/she, because I feel like I'm being very gendered and I'm trying to be very neutral here. He/she is not getting a dime. Or if you know, I'll get into fights where it's like, she's been living there, he's been living there for the past 6 months, so she's paying the electrical bill in full, or so then I have to go back to the divorce attorneys and say, what does the agreement say? What was the understanding during that? And try to level that ship. So even though I represent them in this individual transaction, and that can give them comfort in a neutral person, also, not to say this, Allison, it's more cost effective for me to do that. And,
sure. Yeah.
And she'll be the
100%.
first person to say, like,
Well, mediation
need
is way
to-
more cost effective than having separate
Oh,
attorneys
yeah,
as well. Yeah. I
right.
mean,
No, so,
cooperation.
when I'm selling a property, it's a flat fee that I'm charging them. And, you know, they're used to being billed by the hour.
Right.
So, and often when I remind them that when I'm reaching out to their attorney is because they can't reach a decision, they're going to be billed for that.
Right.
All of a sudden,
right.
kind of people come back to the table. So I'm like, let's be a little bit more reasonable. And, you know, I do have to have tough conversations. That in the most recent transaction, the gentleman was saying, I'm not moving anything out. I'm not doing anything. And then I had to remind him that there was a court order to do so.
Yeah.
So, you know, did I want did he want me to reach out to the divorce attorneys to get this resolved? And then he kind of realized and, had that come to Jesus kind of moment. So, I do it with love, but, it can take a little bit of a strong arm, which, or just kind of a note of reason to kind of bring cost
Cost effectiveness is a huge point. I mean, is mediation really common these days, or?
I think it's becoming more common, but most of my practice is still, I would say is still
Representing
litigation,
someone,
even if it's amicable, right? So there might be that both sides have lawyers and we sit down and we work everything out, but there's not a mediator involved per se.
Okay.
I actually used to work at a firm that we sort of tried to really focus on mediation, and one of the partners there was sort of the godfather of mediation in Boston. So I have good background in that, but for some reason there's still people haven't sort of really gelled onto that, I think, as much as they could. And it is a really
too
cost
emotional
effective.
sometimes. Just too emotional. All right, we're going to take a break in a couple minutes, and then I want to loop you and Erin and talk about the estate planning, like in light of the fact that divorce is so common, and then maybe estate planning at post divorce and how things change, or maybe you're being looped in during divorce, so let's loop you in after the break. But did you have something to add before?
I was just something that you said popped into my head. Usually when we see how bad, or if the divorce is not going too well, it's usually the closer it gets to closing, especially with final walkthrough. So sometimes we go through a house, if we're the listing agent, the day before to make sure hey, tomorrow's closing day, you're going to make sure that everything's out, and whoever has been living in the house, absolutely nothing is gone, or they purposely leave the home and not in great condition. And that's when we really need to bring in every attorney and just be okay.
Absolutely. I have some definite war stories for that.
All right, hold that thought to the break. Hold that thought to the break. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. Check us out at McNamaraFinancial.com or McNamaraoftheMerrimack.com. You can also find our podcast on your podcatcher, McNamara on Money. Joined this morning by Amy Hubert Masferrer, real estate attorney, Sherman Law, Erin Nally, estate planning attorney, Starboard Legal, and Allison Walsh, family law attorney with Walsh Law Office, and Sharon McNamara and Melissa Wallace of Boston Connect Real Estate. Is literally a round table on a square table this morning. We're just taking a quick break. We'll be right back.
WATD FM Marshfield, WBMS Brockton. The South Shore's first choice for live team coverage of breaking news, emergency traffic, and severe weather. WATD. Streaming online at 959WATD.com. And with your smart speaker, just by saying play WATD.
CBS News Brief. Hundreds of buildings were destroyed when an EF3 tornado hit Perryton in North Texas. KTVT TV's Jason Allen.
Streets that had homes and businesses on them are now just piles of debris. Some lots are completely vacant, everything blown off of them.
The Justice Department reports the Minneapolis Police Department has routinely targeted minorities. Attorney General Merrick Garland.
MPD officers stop, search, and then use force against people who are Black and Native American at disproportionate rates.
A guilty verdict on all 63 counts for Robert Bowers in the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting case. But Oren Siegel with the Anti-Defamation League says it's not an isolated incident.
What motivates anti-Semitism in this country, the groups, the narratives, the influencers, the social media, is much broader than any one trial or any one verdict.
CBS News Brief, I'm Wendy Gillette.
95.9 WATD. Good morning. 9:01. Cloudy right now outside our studios, but on the kind of mild side. 63 outside our South Shore studios. Got some rain around us to the east and the west, especially over the outer Cape, and some heavy precipitation. We'll see some of that later on. Right now, things are kind of quiet, but the rain is on the way. The sun will come out tomorrow, a little bit with the clouds. Not too bad for Father's Day. Here's all the details again with Bill Guile. Good morning, Bill.
This Father's Day weekend is going to be starting off on the wet side. Area of low pressure is slowly going to work its way through southern New England for the entire weekend. And Now, we will be into periods of rain this morning, and there could be some locally heavy spots, but most of the heaviest rain should be out at sea. And as we get into the afternoon, it'll be easing up a little bit, tapering back to more in the way of shower activity, although a cooler day. Winds out of the northeast this morning becoming northerly, 5 to 15 miles an hour. And with that wind off the water, we're only going to be looking at highs in the mid 60s. And for tonight, stays cloudy, a few showers, pockets of drizzle and some fog. Overnight lows in the mid 50s. Father's Day, we start off with a couple of early morning showers around, but otherwise the better part of the day is going to stay dry with just mainly cloudy conditions. Although late in the afternoon, there could be another shower moving through, highs again in the mid 60s. For Monday, we'll see some sunshine, although a fair amount of clouds around as well, with highs in the upper 60s to near 70, and there will be the threat of a late day shower. Tuesday, look for partial sunshine, a little bit of a warming trend as temperatures reach into the low 70s. For WATD, I'm Precision Weather Forecasting Meteorologist Bill Giles.
All right, not too bad. Thank you, Bill. Don't forget, anytime you need the weather and you miss it when you're trying to listen for it and you don't want to wait around, just go to our website, 959watd.com. You can also listen live to our stream if you're out of our FM signal range. If you don't want to mess with the computer and you like to talk to your devices, just tell it to play WATD, your smart devices, that is. Some devices you try to talk to and they don't do anything. They don't care. If you don't want to talk to it and you're an app person, Odyssey, free to download, free to use. Great to listen to us, plus thousands of other radio stations out there to AUDACY. Let's get out to the roadways and see how they're doing. Not too much to report right now. I think everyone's still doing things around the house or getting the list together to go to the store. Not too much to report. Route 3, Route 24, the Cape Roads, Route 44, 495, 140. They're all looking great. Just one incident to tell you about. That's in the O'Neill Tunnel northbound. There's a disabled vehicle. Stay to the left to get by. The right lane is blocked. And that is at the Sturrow Drive exit 18. Again, that's in the O'Neill Tunnel northbound. The right lane is blocked. Get over to the left early so you're not stuck in that pattern with everyone else trying to get over. Besides that, everything's good. Traffic on the 9s every morning. This is the South Shores radio station, 95.9 WATD, hour 2 of McNamara on Money, coming up with a live roundtable this morning. And if you've got any questions related to what they're talking about or anything else, give them a call, 781-837-4900, 781-837-4900.
This is Kirk Reed from McNamara Financial. I often get asked, when should I start collecting Social Security? It's not always a quick question to answer, but an important one. If you'd like to have a conversation about your situation, give me a call at 781-834-2010 or check out McNamaraFinancial.com.
Hi, this is Mike McNamara. If you're near retirement, maybe it's time to take a serious look at your retirement plan and your investment strategy to make sure you're going to be okay. We're local, we're a family business, and Justin, Alyssa, Kirk, or myself can help. It's what we do. McNamaraFinancial.com or call us in Marshfield at 781-834-2010.
This is Alyssa McNamara Reed with McNamara Financial in Marshfield. Here's what people want to know about me. Are you a fiduciary? Are you independent? And thus are your recommendations for me in my best interest? Are your costs reasonable? Can you help me with my money and making a plan for my future? Fortunately, the answer to all of those questions is yes. Call my office to find out more. 781-834-2010.
Now, time for McNamara on Money, sponsored by McNamara Financial Services.
Good morning and welcome to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed, a certified financial planner professional with McNamara Financial in Marshfield, Mass. This is a financial talk radio show for people who want to get all areas of their financial life in order, get their kids through college, and live comfortably in retirement. On this show, we will be talking about a wide variety of financial topics. You have to make many important decisions in your life that have to do with money, investments, insurance, mortgages, taxes, estate planning, living your life within your means, and retirement. Our goal is to help you with all of these. We also have lots of great information on our show's website, McNamaraOnMoney.com. You can download podcasts, watch videos, or browse our abundance of written articles on topics related to personal finance. And as always, to find out more about our practice, visit McNamaraFinancial.com. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Good morning, and we're back. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. Full house this morning as we talk about homes in transition or transitional periods in life and legal and financial and real estate issues surrounding those things. We've been talking a lot about divorce. Maybe we'll continue on that a little bit and then transition, pun intended, to something else. So I've joining me this morning, Sharon McNamara, broker owner of Boston Connect Real Estate. We have Melissa Wallace with Boston Connect Real Estate. And we're continuing and stick around. We have another hour of our show, but stick around because we're going to go right into talk real estate with Sharon McNamara and Melissa from 10 to 11 this morning.
Yes.
And we have three attorneys in the studio. Good morning again, ladies. Amy Hubert Masferrer with Sherman Law. She's a real estate attorney. We have Erin Nally, who's an estate planning attorney with Starboard Legal, and Allison Walsh, family law attorney, Walsh Law Office. So thanks again for being here. I'm just meeting these ladies for the first time, but the conversation has been great. And let's continue. So I did want to loop you in, Erin, on the estate planning side. You know, we've talked a lot about divorce and issues surrounding that. So I guess my first question would be, you know, divorce is still common as, you know, is it, I don't know the statistics, half of marriages end in divorce or something along those lines, right? So when you're doing estate planning, like, you know, is it, for a newly married couple, for example, or a couple just, you know, starting their family, like, you know, is that top of mind for you? Is it addressed at all? Like, our prenups, well, I guess prenup would be before they got married, but like, you know, how does this come in? How does this factor into what you do for your clients?
Yeah. So, you know, estate planning is really, I often tell people it's just sort of the directions of what's going to be taking place. If you can't perform whatever task you're only able to perform, right? I tell people all the time, it comes down to your signature. If you can't sign for something or you can't provide a photo ID for something, who's going to do it for you? If you don't assign it to someone, you're going to go to probate court and a judge is going to do it for you and sort of go through their due diligence of making sure that whoever's making the request to handle whatever it is on your behalf is responsible enough to do so. So it's sort of, mine is sort of it doesn't give a lot of instant gratification, but it's the sort of thing that if you do need it, you're going to wish you had it when you need it, because at that point it's a little late.
Oh, it's a huge pain. If you don't have, if you haven't done estate planning and something comes up, it's a huge pain. I have one client who, she was divorced. They had 2 kids. Her ex-husband passed away without any estate planning documents. And, you know, it was just a complicated situation. It took her 5 years to settle his estate or something like that. And she needed conservatorship for her young kids. And, you know, they weren't even married, but just the complications surrounding that and the issues with his side of the family and where do the assets go and, you know, all that stuff. And I mean, I guess I could tell you story after story about people that haven't planned and how much work it is to, you know, go through the courts and how long it takes.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, maybe the courts are sort of back up and running as normal now, but the last couple of years, everything has just taken so
Even
long.
normal though,
So
it's not great.
long. Yeah, that's true.
They're always,
That's true. Yeah. But how common are prenuptial agreements? Are they common at all?
You know, I don't find them to be particularly common. I love it when people have a prenuptial agreement, only because it's just like, I don't know, to me, I feel like it's such a wonderful sign of respect to be able to sit down and calmly be like, hey, listen, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. Let's get together. And, you know, like you're coming to an agreement on something when you're calm. Right. As opposed to like, in Allison's practice, they're like coming in gangbusters, like, and another thing, you know what I mean? And so that's where, you know, if you can sort of, everyone can keep their head about it and make calm decisions, then when things aren't calm, you're like, all right, well, I had my together here. So let's follow these directions that we know that we put in place. But again, they're also something that you want to look at every 3 to 5 years at least, because so many things change, whether it's your assets or your people or your values, or, you know what I mean? Like maybe a divorce has taken place and now maybe your first assignment isn't your first assignment anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
It doesn't surprise me that they're not common. I mean, still people are getting married younger ages when they haven't
Right.
accumulated assets. They're not really thinking about that. And no one goes into at least their first marriage thinking they're going to get divorced, right? So it doesn't, why would we be planning for that? That's not, that's not going to happen. You can understand that peace of mind, but I would imagine
why people don't do estate planning.
Right.
It's why
because it's not going to, right.
People they consider it like that. So my father, who might be listening, hi Dad, he's 88, he's an attorney, and it took me forever to get him to do his estate planning because there is this sort of idea that because you're planning for it, now it's going to happen. And we say 50%, I think it's even higher now, marriages end in divorce. Everybody's life ends in death. But yet, you're not going to escape it.
But not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. But again, it's about making sure the focus is always about, do you want things to be in your control? Do you want your wishes to be carried out and to have that understanding? I do see some prenuptial agreements. You know what I see more common is cohabitation agreements.
I wondered about that because many people, that's for people that are living together but aren't married. I was also thinking about people that aren't married that own real estate together and what sort of agreements should be in place for that. Okay.
So typically, so with the prenuptial agreements, a lot of times you have, most people are entering their marriage typically on equal footing if they're marrying young. So there's not, this tremendous assets. So they kind of, and I think there's still a stigma around prenuptials that like, of course I love you. I trust you. We're in it.
However, what's mine is yours. However,
exactly. With a cohabitation agreement, especially with the housing market where it is, where we see this come in a lot is one parent is putting up money for that couple to buy the property. And then the parent is saying like, well, we really like Johnny, but like, if this doesn't work out, the money goes with you. So we do see that frequently. And typically with the cohabitation agreement, the couples are more amendable to it because they understand that they haven't made that commitment yet. So it's sort of less offensive to them. They kind of realize that they're trying out living together and they're trying out owning things together. But, again, they're typically young couples and an asset is usually coming from a third party, which makes that conversation easier to be like, I love you. It's forever. But, Dad says,
I would imagine many prenups are driven by one
family
the
members.
force of the hand of one family member or side of the family.
Yes.
Does a cohabitation agreement apply specifically to equity in a piece of real estate, or is it more broad than that?
Well, typically for my purposes, it can be more broad. Yeah, it can be more broad. For my purposes, it's just around the real estate and that asset. So it can be very limited. Typically, like a couple, that's their first major shared asset is a house. So that's typically where I see it.
Do you prepare cohabitation agreements? Like who does that? The estate planning attorney or?
I can do
the real estate attorneys.
I've done them. Yes.
All you ladies can do them. Okay.
Yeah. And I would say, I think they're less common now than they used to be. I went to law school in New York State. And so New York State was later having gay marriage than Massachusetts was. Massachusetts was like 2004, I think. And now obviously since 2014, it's nationwide. But for many states for a long time, because they didn't have the laws that we had here, you had to just do cohabs.
I see. Okay. Because they couldn't.
No, because it was
marry.
They couldn't marry. So you would sort of see the cohab agreement almost like the separation agreement. So if folks were together, they might have a cohab, we call it cohab, to sort of say who's going to pay the bills, who's going to get whatever. But even if they didn't have one, that was almost how you kind of divide, if they broke up, who's going to get the equity in the house? Who's going to, is there going to be a division of retirement assets? Who's paying child support if they adopted a child, whatever. So I think they're a little bit less common now, which is a good thing, right? That, now we can all just sort of access the same justice.
Well, and during that time too, estate planning was so needed to be done. That was crucial.
So much more important when they couldn't marry, you mean, because they didn't have the state laws to protect each other.
That natural, this is my spouse, the property is passing to them, my assets are passing to them. Everything had to be documented. Healthcare proxies, power of attorneys, they couldn't just step in as a spouse. So that's some in Pride Month. That's some.
I know we don't have to worry about that anymore.
We don't have to worry about that. But as now that they're married, they can get divorced. So
Sharon and Melissa, like how often are you working with couples that are purchasing a home together, not being married, and maybe talk through the complications and the discussions that you have with them surrounding that and the, I don't know, warnings or guidance, or not warnings, but guidance in that regard, and nothing that's wrong with that, but
Well, everybody
It's a little
thinks it's a
different,
great
more
idea
complicated,
until it
right?
isn't, right?
Is it pretty common for young
Um,
couples to be looking at real estate together without being married?
I feel like I see a lot when I host open houses.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I go to a lot of the open houses that our agents do because I do all the social media for them. So I do attend a lot of open houses, and I do see, because you overhear people sort of tend to overshare at open houses. So they're walking around, they feel comfortable in the house, and they're like, oh yeah, like we're this is gonna be our first house together. We're getting married. Like they might be engaged or like thinking about getting engaged or something like that. I think it's hard for me because I'm also sort of out there trying to buy a house on my own, not with a partner. So I feel like my mindset has sort of shifted. For me, it's like, I want to do this on my own. If I can't do it on my own, then I shouldn't do it. That's my mindset sort of. So, but Sharon, I'm trying to think of like your active clients right now that are looking, and I'm thinking of like, do you
Or sellers too?
Yeah.
Like, is it really common for couples to not be married selling a home, or is it
Well,
not that common?
I started to say too is
Oh, can't hear
that-
Sharon. Can you guys?
No.
Oh yeah,
No,
I
I
can
don't know
hear
why
Sharon.
you can't.
Oh, we can't hear you. Hold on. Maybe Tim needs to turn you on or something. He's running in. Tim's to the rescue. No? Oh.
I mean,
Wow.
I
don't know why
definitely
you
see
can't hear
a
me.
mix for sure. I mean, we have a lot of people who buy that first condo together,
Yep.
South Boston.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
maximizing that value and moving up. So I still see it. A lot of times there's a ring in between.
Yeah.
You're kind of dealing with it, but
Yeah,
those engagements can last a while.
yeah,
so we
yeah,
kinda-
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah. Yep. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think it's always a great idea until it isn't.
Yeah.
So, when we're seeing people do that, and I always say, definitely, I think that's when Amy, I would say definitely 100% is educating before they make that final decision to
Yeah.
do that, as couples, because a lot of times if they're just dating, that breakups are easy, but then that can just end up being sort of a little bit of a mess. So but we do see it. And I always say, a great idea would be to put that like ring in a box that when she's undoing it, like make this official. So we do see that a lot. One of the other things I was thinking of as everybody was talking to though is, with a lot of times I see it with women, but it is men too. And Alyssa, we definitely saw this when we were doing financially secure women. A lot of times women are giving up their jobs and they're at-home moms and they're giving up their careers and they're doing all that. So I am sort of curious how that sort of plays into things for all of the attorneys on our panel today too, is what is fair at that point? Because now the woman is having a hard time even getting back into the workforce, you know what I mean? After they've given up their whole career. Is that thought of in a prenup?
It can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Massachusetts alimony statute actually has a sort of a special carve out for that. There's a concept called rehabilitative alimony, which basically is sort of like a 6 month to 5 year opportunity for a stay-at-home mom to kind of get back on her feet. So it would almost be like some additional financial support from the wage earning husband. And I've seen in the past, sometimes people go back and get a master's degree. They might do a career change, get a teaching certificate, right, to have the same schedule as the kids. They're going to go teach school. So it sort of gives you a little bit of time to maybe recertify yourself, get back into the career, and then ramp that up. And then the idea would be at the end of a few years, you'd be at a better earning place. And then that support can be adjusted.
Do the courts get involved at all in like, I'm not sure how to frame this question, but like think of an example where I guess it'll be sexist. The male member of the couple is working, the female member of the couple either is working part-time or took some time off. And, even women that put their careers on hold, temporary and then back to work, but still maybe earnings ability takes a little while to catch up, right? Because they were out of the workforce for a period of time or whatever, or maybe they go back part-time. So think of a situation like that. And then, and then they divorce. And I understand that alimony is, if they can't agree on it, there's a calculation, right? It's like, I don't know, a third of the difference or something like that. You could talk about the specifics, but so I guess my question is, if for example, the female member of the couple is just working part-time or not working much at all, but based on, experience and education has the ability at some point to go back to work and earn X dollars based on, her career path.
but what if she doesn't want to, and she can make a life work on the alimony that she's receiving? Does the court get involved at all and will like
forcing
any sort of judgment or like, yeah, right. And so because then if you're the male member of the couple, and you could imagine maybe at some point, maybe especially when the kids are older, maybe frustrations in that regard, right? But she could go back to work, so I shouldn't have to pay her X alimony and things like that. I'm just, thinking of avoiding, stress on an already stressful situation. So do the courts get involved in any sort of judgments in that regard?
They can. So there's a nobody's going to force you to go to work, right? Like you can't force somebody to go get a job or
it's not that easy to be like, you could earn X. I understand that.
There's actually vocational experts that can figure that out.
Oh, so you can do that. Okay.
Yes, there are people that you can hire and they will tell you what you can and should make. Okay. And that becomes useful. And sometimes we need those vocational experts because the courts have a concept called imputation of income. So basically nobody's going to force you to go get a job, but if if you have a baby at home, it's a very if there's like a 2-year-old or especially like a breastfeeding child, like no one's making mom go back to work. But if all the kids are kindergarten and above, and mom has X amount of hours during the day, there becomes sort of a presumption that mom should be working. Would mom be making the same as if she hadn't left the workforce 5 years ago? Of course not. That's where you got to kind of do the math. But if mom just chooses to not, and again, mom, I'm sorry to be using gender stereotypes, but it is more common. You can't argue that. But if mom decides that, okay, I don't want to go back to work, the court can factor in sort of a presumed income for her so that the husband wouldn't be paying as much.
But in that situation, the husband would have to bring her to court probably.
Correct.
It wouldn't just.
Right. And there'd be, arguments made, as to why or why not.
Okay.
A different situation would be if we see marriages that, break up after 30 years or something, and the wife's been out of the workforce for 30 or more years.
Oh, sure.
That's I mean, at that point, that's
your earnings ability is
you're not
different.
going to be able to go back and, and start off and make that, now that's a situation where we'd be looking more at, there'd be basically a lifetime alimony order until the husband either stopped working or retired. And, oftentimes I see clients like that, they'll go and get a part-time job or something to supplement, but I mean, they're never going to get back into their career the way that was when they were in their 20s or whatever.
Can you remind us like what, I know there are certain things like in a divorce agreement that are final, and then there are certain things that aren't
or modifiable.
Right? Yeah. Right. And I forget the terminology that you attorneys like to use, but
we love legalese and Latin. Right. So it's so there's parts of the divorce judgment that we call survive, and there's parts that merge, and those are sort of the two legal terms. But effectively, the survival is really just the things you can't change, right? So it's going to be that way forever. It's going to survive like that forever. The things that can change, we say merge, and that gets a little bit dicey, but basically that means you can keep going back to court, that it becomes modifiable. So things that are modifiable are anything to do with your kids, because we can't project, you get divorced when your kid is 2. Who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now? Who's working where? Has somebody lost their job? Or is your child going to go to college? Does a child have a special need? Like we have no idea at that age, right? So that you can always go back. Anything on a kid always can go back. Things that are always survivable, meaning you can't change it, are the asset division. There's no second look at that unless if there were fraud or, some sort of criminal activity, right? But I mean, absent extraordinary circumstances, if you guys decide somebody's keeping the house, someone's keeping the retirement account, and we're splitting the bank account, that's not going to get, you don't get a second bite at the apple on that. Things that can survive or can change depending on, so you have a choice on this, is alimony. Sometimes people like to lock their alimony in. Especially if it's a shorter term alimony order, like I was talking about, just a few years, kind of assume I'm making this, I want to lock in the number that might be beneficial to them. In case they get a raise or something like that. There's benefits,
There's
right?
reasons.
Or you can leave it modifiable, right? And then it could fluctuate based on income, etc. Health insurance for the party. So health insurance for the children, you can always go back because it's kid related. But health insurance for the husband or wife, you can either make a decision that's final, or you can leave that as an open decision as well. Because again, what if, the employer provides the health insurance and somebody loses their job? That is a situation that you might need to go back and take a look at it again. So those are sort of the big buckets.
Is it common for couples to go back to bring each other back to court and modify those things, or?
With
I would
kids,
imagine
with
so,
kids,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
With kids, if you get divorced and your children are young, I would say you're almost certainly going to have to go back at least once.
Okay, yeah.
And typically,
I'm not an attorney, Alyssa, and I could have answered that one.
All
for you.
right, all right.
dealing with child, because there's so many life changes that happen
Yeah.
between your time your child's born and the time that they're 21 or
Yeah,
22, right? So
yeah.
it's like you got to deal with, if there's a new job, a job loss, changing the child support temporarily. You might have to deal with, like I said, health insurance. Somebody loses their job. Is the other spouse going to pick up the insurance for the kids? How are we paying for college? Right? That's a hot topic. How are we deciding which college? Are we going to do UMass? Are we going to take out the loans and go somewhere else? All of those pieces, can get decided or litigated down the line. So yeah, with kids, I would say almost definitely. Less so with if it's a short-term marriage and there's no kids, that pretty much is a walk away. Like you typically don't go back and modify on that, right?
Yeah.
And then longer term marriages, sometimes we'll see people go back to modify alimony, but that's usually that's typically.
I guess my question was more like, I guess that, I'm the eternal optimist. Like how often are couples just like kind of working that stuff out on their own versus going back to court? I guess you don't really know because you might not see the couples that just kind of work it out on their own.
Right. And people work a lot of stuff out on their own.
Yeah.
It's when they get stuck that they come to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Sometimes we have people come back that are like, yeah, we've had this parenting arrangement with custody or whatever. We haven't followed it at all. I hear that. And then it's like, well,
as long as they're cooperating.
Yeah, we've never followed it. And
everybody's
now
happy.
they finally hit a bump in the road. And then, somebody's like, hey, that's not your day, and then all of a sudden it's like, we have to start back at square one. So.
Right. Okay.
I have a question for Erin, if I can.
Go ahead. We only have like a couple minutes, but maybe we could finish it up.
Okay, so maybe, we can finish it up. So I had heard of a situation where somebody, he owned a property before he got married, and he had it in an irrevocable trust. So, and then, so now her name isn't on it. And after, 15 years of being married, getting divorced, what happens there?
There's no way she's getting any of that. I'll tell you that right now, but hold on. We'll have the attorney answer that after the break. We're going to take a break and then Erin can think about her response to that. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. We had some great conversation this morning about transitionary, I would call it transitionary periods in life. We've focused a lot regarding, surrounding divorce, but maybe we can switch it up after the break and then we'll continue on to from 10 to 11 to talk real estate roundtable with Sharon McNamara and Melissa Wallace. I'll just again give out the name of our awesome guest this morning, Amy Hubert Masferrer, real estate attorney with Sherman Law, Erin Nally, an estate planning attorney with Starboard Legal, and Allison Walsh, Walsh Law Office, and of course Sharon McNamara and Melissa Wallace with Boston Connect Real Estate. We're just taking a quick break and we'll be right back.
Market turbulence can cause panic, and you might be wondering if your investments are allocated properly. I'm Kirk Reed with McNamara Financial in Marshfield. Let me help you understand your investment strategy and ensure that it is suitable for you. Then you can turn off the financial news and move on with your life.
You own a business, or you're running a nonprofit or a municipality, and you just might be overwhelmed with all the changes in state healthcare law, federal mandates, rules governing retirement, employee benefits. For instance, do your employees understand the value and the costs of their current benefits? By the way, what about tomorrow's changes in state and federal policy? Keeping up is a full-time job, and you have better things to do. Lockton Companies of Boston are benefits experts. To be somewhat formal, Lockton Companies offers strategic consulting that assists employers in providing wellness and health promotion programs and offers advisory services to provide insight, understanding, and answers. Let Lockton handle the headaches. Visit the web at lockton.com. Leave the aspirin on the shelf. Lockton.com.
This is Alyssa McNamara Reed with McNamara Financial in Marshfield. When I hosted the most recent Smart with Money Fair for the Marshfield High School seniors, we went through an exercise comparing investing an amount of money over 40 years versus investing that same total amount of money over 20 years. The end result for the person who saved longer was more than twice the amount of the other person's. This is a hypothetical exercise, of course, but the point remains: save early and save often. If I can help you save early and often, visit our website at McNamaraFinancial.com. Hi, this is Alyssa McNamara Reed. Bear with me as we need a little compliance disclosure. In our practice, we give financial advice to our clients. We know their financial situation in detail before doing so.
That's generally not the case with callers we speak to on the show. We can't give truly meaningful financial advice because we don't know the detailed financial situation of the caller. We just met. Any suggestions we make to callers are generic in nature and meant to steer the caller in the right direction. Callers should check with their own financial professionals before implementing any suggestions that we may make. At times on this show, we talk about investments and investment performance. Investment returns are not guaranteed, and past performance does not guarantee future results. And we're back. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. Full house this morning with Sharon McNamara. Oh, wait, she back? There, she's back. Good morning, Sharon, with Boston Connect Real Estate, and Melissa Wallace with Boston Connect Real Estate. We also have, I'm going to have you guys give out your contact information because we're going to probably run out of time before the end of the show because we'll have just such vigorous conversation and entertaining conversation. But you guys have been awesome and this has been great. We still have another half hour of my show anyway, and then we'll continue on to talk real estate after that. But so Amy Hubert Masferrer, who's a real estate attorney with Sherman Law. So again, your offices are in Hingham and Plymouth, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And do you want to give out your contact information, please, for our listeners?
Sure. You can reach me at 617-504-9151. That's my direct number. And my email is AHM for Amy Hubert Masferrer at timshermanlaw.com.
And the website is timshermanlaw.com.
It is. Yep.
Okay. And then we have Erin Nally, who's an estate planning attorney, Starboard Legal in Norwell. Your office is right. And would you want to give out your contact info, please?
Yep, sure. My email is Erin at starboardlegal.com and my number is 781-733-3855.
And the website is
starboardlegal.com.
So you said Starboard. I feel like I keep saying it's Starboard.
It's kind of like tomato.
Starboard. All right. And then we have Allison Walsh, who's a family law attorney with Walsh Law Offices in Hingham as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep,
And
we're
you're-
right across from Derby Street Shops.
Oh, fancy.
So you can
Okay.
shop and dine and visit me.
Can they afford to do that while divorced?
I find that it's actually very therapeutic to have shopping and dining nearby. You know, meet your friends after
I know.
work. You know,
It's very therapeutic.
After-
Yes. And do you want to give out your contact info?
Sure. It's our phone number is 781-288-5400. And our website is AllisonWalshlaw.com. 2 L's, 1 I. My email is ALLISON@AllisonWalshlaw.com.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So before the break, we had a question for you, Erin, from Sharon regarding a 15-ish year marriage. Home was an irrevocable trust. And
Yeah,
one
the
name,
irrevocable trust piece, right?
Yeah.
So in true attorney fashion, it depends. But really, when it comes to irrevocable trusts, whoever is the trust is irrevocable.
Yeah,
It
it's
can't be
not- it's not
changed.
you can't break it, yeah.
And the owner of, the person that, or the individuals that receive the benefit are whoever the beneficiaries are.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have true ownership. The trustee would help manage. And then whoever is creating the trust, maybe they're funding it, maybe they're the one adding the asset.
Yeah.
But once they add the asset, so if I create an irrevocable trust for your benefit, if I put my house in there, it's now yours.
It's done. Yeah.
I can't, you are the one that control it. I'm giving it away.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with irrevocable trust that I cannot emphasize enough is that
it's a big decision.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
you're giving it away. It's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
And you can say, oh, well, I'm giving it to the kids and they know this and they know that. But when it comes down to, right, is that when everything's calm, we make these great decisions. But
Yeah.
then when something hits the fan and then we're like, okay, now what? And
Yeah.
who's in charge and who has the authority?
Yeah.
And are they going to, what are they going to do? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because that's, so it's, so to, was it Sharon's question?
Yeah, Sharon.
To Sharon's question, it's sort of, it might not be hers. She might not have any right to that asset at all because it
Okay,
belongs
yeah.
to whoever those beneficiaries are. It might not even be her husband.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So
that and that would be out of his estate, right? Because something that goes into the irrevocable trust would be out of his estate. I mean,
Maybe.
maybe. And
Yeah.
okay, so she's probably not getting any of that asset.
So the husband's putting the house or whatever, the asset into an irrevocable trust for someone other than the wife.
if that's what happens.
It
yeah.
sounds like he did it before they
And
got married, so I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Like his mother.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So then,
all right.
are you saying so if he created an irrevocable trust for the benefit of his mother, then she would technically be
Yeah,
the
before-
one that has the
Right.
then the divorcing
asset.
spouse wouldn't be
Right.
eligible for any.
Right.
that
Right,
doesn't
because
sound
it
like it. Okay.
basically
Yeah.
is, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's tricky.
So we were talking off,
Yeah.
when we were off air about like sort of the estate planning issues surrounding divorce. And one of the questions that came up, Amy, I think it was your question, is like, think about a couple that has kids and they divorce, and maybe they had done estate planning while they were married. And then I would imagine, or at least it's recommended, that the estate plan should be updated post-divorce, right? How quickly and how often that happens, who knows? But hopefully it happens, and estate planning documents are redone because things at that point would change, right? So I think your question was, Amy, is like, well, what happens if like there's conflicting
Right.
wishes regarding, in particular, guardianship of children? And maybe we can talk through some other things too. But so I guess, how often do you often work with couples that redo estate planning documents post-divorce? Or maybe you're working with one member of the couple. Maybe you don't even know what's in the other member of the
Right.
couple's
I mean,
documents.
do you really have a
yeah.
right to even know that?
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
been asked during the
Right.
divorce. you
Yeah,
know?
often it's that sort of conversation with the person, right?
Yeah.
Where are they? I try to meet people where they are, as opposed to saying, all right, like these are all the things you got to do, right? Because number one, like we were saying, it comes down to what that person wants ultimately for whatever it is that they're whatever it is that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
Post divorce, a lot of times if estate planning has already been done, their first person is their spouse, and they probably don't want their first person to be that person anymore.
Right.
Some documents, like I'll have language in my documents that says, if something does happen, we're just going to pretend like that first person just doesn't exist anymore. So like if you get divorced, if there's a divorce judgment, they're just not going to be in that first position
So it's
anymore.
already
And
embedded.
whoever
Like
is in
self-executing
second- exactly.
documents,
So
yeah.
then that way, like, God forbid something happens as you're walking out of the courthouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
You didn't redo your documents yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's the thing too about estate planning documents is that you might not die, right? So if you just lose your capacity, you're still in charge and responsible for all these things that you're in charge and responsible for. So who's going to step into your shoes to maintain those responsibilities, whether it be for a temporary period of time because you are heading off to Fiji, or because you know you're in the hospital and something happened, so like I think especially in divorce too, like Amy was saying, how there's not sort of that presumed person, right?
Yeah.
Like who is going to be that other individual to step in.
Okay.
And is there any obligation to have transparency between the spouses in that post-divorce? I don't think there is,
No.
right? There isn't.
No.
Yeah.
No,
You can't
because
force-
now
you
you're
can't force
you're
that.
independent people,
Right.
right? It's I think isn't the language like it's as if no marriage ever existed. I think
Exactly.
is
Yeah, it's-
like the
it's
court
beautifully
language.
written.
okay.
Yeah, I know it's so
poetic.
unromantic. It's the opposite of your wedding.
So my only choice is to haunt from the grave. Is that what you're saying? I'm not above it. I'm not above it.
But we were talking about like the guardianship question, like if the
Right.
husband named one person as legal guardian for the kids and the wife named another person as legal guardian for the kids.
Right.
In order for that to even come about where there would be a disagreement, there would have to be like a simultaneous death. And what are the
Right.
chances that a divorced couple is going to like
Yeah.
die in a plane crash together?
Listen.
Right?
Well, that's like
I mean,
that's like
right?
the royal family, right? Like
Right.
they don't want Will and Kate like flying together
Right.
because so
Okay,
it's-
yeah, okay.
so basically don't travel with your ex. I
Right.
would say.
Yeah. Right, it would like almost
want to
never
anyway.
Yeah.
right, come into
Right,
play.
right. You
Yeah.
know, I think that's one of the hardest things as a divorced person is that like you lose that control. Like
Sure.
obviously, you're deceased, but you are thinking about, your children and who would raise them in the event that you were deceased.
Well, some people want control beyond the grave, which is why
I
you
do,
attorneys
yes.
draft trusts and things like that.
Yes, I did
Yeah.
want control beyond the
Yeah.
grave. So that was probably aggravating in my marriage. I'm going to guess. To his credit.
We were talking a little bit earlier about or maybe we were talking about it off air. Like, is there any, think about a couple that was, married for 15 or 20 years or whatever it is, and they're dividing their assets.
Mhm.
And then, thinking ahead, not uncommon for one or both of them to get remarried.
Mhm.
Right. Is there any, like during the divorce process, is there any sort of discussion or agreement about if you are to remarry, XYZ assets that we accumulated in our lifetime should go to our children, not the spouse, or some percent of that? Is that a normal discussion, or is that like completely off the table, or what are,
That actually comes up a lot.
Does it come
with
up a lot?
me,
Okay.
Yeah,
with my planning, because
Okay.
we'll say, especially like when blended families will come in, or couples that are in their second marriage and maybe there's kids from both marriage. Do you know what I mean? Like, we'll have that conversation. Well, if something happens to one of you, is the other kids or are their kids going to have to wait for the second spouse
right
to pass
Right.
before they, you know what I mean? Or maybe, and that's sort of, and then they answer that question. Well, geez, I don't want that to happen. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And so they'll say, maybe they'll put in a provision there that says, if I pass, my kids get X dollar amount as a specific distribution. And then upon passing of my new spouse, then it's divided however it is, like they get sort of the rest. But it's a huge conversation, because you don't want, like,
spouses would have to agree on it though, otherwise there's no enforceability, right? If one spouse were to get remarried, even if you had a verbal agreement, like, well, yeah, these assets should go to the kids. But if there's no planning and there's no agreement, right, or no probably prenup before a second marriage, then it's off the table, right? And there's
Right.
no-
Yeah. I run into it
Yeah.
more on the prenup side. So
Yeah.
if there's a second or third or sometimes fourth marriage, usually not fourth.
Yeah.
That right.
Smart
So
enough.
sometimes
Yeah.
we'll see, as people especially get older too, they start to think about that and
Yeah.
they think, okay, well, I have this house, but I want to make sure that my kids get
Yeah.
part of it or that,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think I see it more along those lines. Younger folks that get prenups, a lot of times it's family driven. It's
Yeah.
usually the
Mhm.
parents that want them to get it.
Yeah.
And it's, when people are on a second or third marriage, it's usually them that's driving it.
Yeah.
And sometimes for that reason.
Yeah. Go ahead, Melissa. You have a
You could hear me.
comment. Yes.
No, getting back to the guardianship, I'm just surprised that, like, when a divorced couple is sort of deciding guardianship, they can choose different people, like,
Right.
because what happens, like, if they do both die,
Right.
like, now you have two agreements of two different people. Like, I'm just surprised when it
conflicting.
comes
I think
to
it's that
children.
the odds of them
Yeah.
dying simultaneously
Yeah.
are so small. So basically,
So, okay, so then one of them, what if the person, they divorced, one has like full custody, but so if the
The other one
parents
gets-
doesn't have full custody, they can't like do
Custody-
guardianship.
say that I have full custody of my kids
Mm-hmm.
post divorce and my husband only had visitation or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Hypothetically. If I were to die first, it doesn't matter that he only has every other weekend. He now has those kids 100% of the time. He's the biological father.
Yeah.
Biological parents actually have constitutional rights to their children. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
the custodial parent wants. Constitutionally, if you
Yeah.
die, unless, then you get into if dad was completely unfit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be a different situation. But assuming
Yeah.
that he's like a decent dad, there's no one's looking at who you wanted to take over
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you never get to that. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like this would be more of an issue with a married couple who named a married couple could still
Yeah.
name different guardians for the kids in their wills. I'm sure you wouldn't recommend it, but theoretically it could happen
They
if they
could.
had attorneys draft wills separately. I actually had this issue come up with a married couple and they couldn't agree on guardianship of kids. And it was kind of like, well, what happens? I don't know. Because they're more likely to die together in a car accident or whatever.
Right.
So that would be more of an issue. And I don't know. I guess the courts would decide. I don't know.
Yeah, I
What-
think
what-
you'd have competing.
Yeah.
If all the
yeah.
documents were done correctly, you'd have equally valid appointments
Right,
of guardian,
right.
and then you'd have those folks would get a presumption in court. But I guess, say you have a teenage child and the teenage child doesn't like either of the people, they can actually nominate someone totally separately, and that jumps the line, right, Erin?
Yep.
I think, yeah.
a teenager of what age?
14,
18?
14 and
Oh,
above.
it's 14.
Yeah, 18, there wouldn't be the 18-year-old.
18 there would, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So at 14, they can do,
So yeah, you could have an 8th or a 9th grader that could say, you know what, you nominated Auntie so-and-so and you nominated Uncle so-and-so, and I don't like either of them. And I like,
What teenager likes
Auntie
anybody?
whoever,
Right.
and that would jump the line in the court.
Oh,
The child's
interesting.
preference at that age would take over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of nice to know, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
mean,
it
that
seems
they-
like there should be some
Yeah.
say, at least reflected.
Yeah. What's comfortable for them in an awful situation.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Now, this might be a question for Erin. Do you have an obligation to notify a guardian that you're appointing them as the
Yeah.
guardian?
That's a good idea.
Because I'm thinking.
No, there's
I don't
no
think so.
obligation. They could
Remember the
find
movie
out.
Baby Boom?
Yeah.
Usually it's good practice.
It is good
but-
practice.
That's like right out of a movie,
Yeah,
like Baby
it is.
Boom, right? Which
It
is
is
like my
Baby
favorite
Boom,
movie
one of my
from the 80s.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this person has passed away, and now you are.
Proud owner.
That was like that Big Daddy with Adam Sandler, the like little kid.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would seem like that would be, kind of a good, I mean, I guess it could always, because circumstances change, but like there is no legal, there's no court saying like like I'm like godmother to like 75 children.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was it's hard to say
Which
no.
doesn't mean anything legally,
Yeah, it doesn't
right?
mean
It's
anything
just like
legally, but
old
like
school.
God
Yeah.
only knows how many children I might be inheriting. It's something I'm concerned about.
I was asked to be a godmother at a Texas Roadhouse in New York a couple of months ago. Like no joke. What a story.
It's so flattering.
I don't live around here though. And I'm like, I just
Right.
kind of like,
You're like, I'll take a really
It's more of
potato.
just a
Yeah.
Right.
I like the corn there.
Yeah, exactly. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So I have a question for, sorry. I
Yeah, no, that's all right. We
completely
only have 10 or 12 minutes. I was thinking we're not going to move on from divorce. We're going to have to do a
Yes.
whole nother show for
Well, I'm actually moving on
transitions.
from divorce.
Okay, fine.
Because
Yes.
I can't relate.
trying-
I am
I'm
not
trying to move on
divorced.
from divorce.
I just love you
Looking
so
forward to
much.
death.
Looking forward to death.
My next transition.
Maybe that'll be the next show. Looking
right.
forward to death.
Yeah, exactly. How to put a smile.
I'll put a smile on that.
Yes,
oh,
right.
bring me back for that one. Please.
I'm just saying, Erin could do it. Erin could do it.
So I have a question for you. So somebody who comes into you, they want to do estate planning because they own property, they own assets. They're not married, they don't have children. So where do you sort of navigate like who this person is going to leave their things to? So say so like I'm 32, I don't have any children, I'm not married, but if I bought a house, I would want to do some sort of planning if I was to die the day after closing,
Yeah.
So where's sort of your professional sort of navigation through that if they don't really have many people in their lives?
Yeah. So
That's what charities are for.
that's a very good point. I try not to do much navigating.
Yeah, that's
and,
personal
and
preference.
more
Yeah.
talk out loud. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of it really comes down to just sort of having that conversation about, well, what if this happened? Because that's
Yeah.
a lot of what it is. I tell people all the time, it's life's what ifs is what I'm planning for. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
we don't know them. We just don't. Like ideally they don't come up, right? What if divorce happens? What if bankruptcy happens?
Yeah.
What if I die? What if I don't die?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these are the things that like no one wants to think about it. Do you know? But at the same time, it's reality,
Yeah.
right? And so like I said earlier, it's a gift to the others, right? And not so much for you because you're handing them a set of directions when
Right.
everyone's kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
freaking out over the situation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of going back to your question, it's to say like, well, let's have that conversation. What is important to you? We'll talk about values. Where do you see things going? What happens if something happened last week? You know, and then those conversations then help elicit what would be best for you.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and then in 3 years, we have the same conversation. You're like,
Right.
so things changed. Where's
Yeah.
this? Where's that?
Yeah.
Tell me how it's going.
Yeah.
You know, and then we figure out whether what we did still fits. And if it still fits, you're psyched.
Right.
So, in my experience, single, no kids, the estate planning tends to take a backseat because there's no financial dependence to really plan for, and it's kind of like, well, that's not my problem. I'm not here, right? If I die, and
Denial.
yeah,
That's finest.
Right.
And I guess I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but I would somewhat agree. It's like low on the list of things, priorities in your life. Single, no kids. Estate planning is,
Right.
I guess, depending on level of assets and your wishes, right? If someone had very specific wishes, then obviously some estate planning. But but Massachusetts, like in absence of planning, Massachusetts intestate law would Melissa's, for example, assets would go to her parents first, and then if they weren't living, to your siblings.
Yep.
And then after that, I have no idea where do they go after that.
Right.
Oh yeah. there's
Yeah.
like a-
Aunts and uncles and all like that, nieces and nephews. Yeah.
And your
It goes up to
baby.
parents first, right? And then it goes,
Yeah.
and then it goes across.
But
the siblings.
I have to say almost estate planning for single, not married, no kids can sometimes even be more important because of if something happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who is that person going to be? Do you know,
Yeah.
like even, and, going back to the kids turning into adults at 18, I have a set of clients actually that came in because their son's teammates' parents weren't contacted after something happened to him. And he just assumed that they would be because, he's 18. They're always called. Do you know what I mean? And then
When you're 18,
3
you're an
days
adult, yeah.
later,
Yeah.
they were like, oh my gosh, well, we had no idea. And he just assumed they would have been called. But
Yeah.
like
Right.
without documentation, they're not going to call him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, no one, who's going to get notified? How are
Right.
people gonna
Yeah.
start?
talk
This is where
about
like
that with
unclaimed
college.
property, that's probably like,
Right.
this is like a lot of where this unclaimed property
Yeah.
comes from, probably situations like that
Right.
where there's no one aware of what were the, right? There's no spouse, there's no
Yeah.
one like
Yep.
aware of, well, what, I'd hate to pick on you, but you brought yourself up, like,
Yeah.
where are Melissa's assets?
Yeah,
Like, what does she
exactly.
have for accounts?
What's their
Yeah.
But even-
intention?
And with no physical mail, right? Every like paperless statement
Yeah.
delivery
Yeah.
these days, like
100%,
there's
not
not even
knowing.
anything coming in the
Yes.
mail to
Yeah.
bring,
I mean,
bring
those are
that
the
about. Yeah.
conversations we definitely have. I mean, I
Yeah.
with my own family being like, what are your assets? What are, it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I do think, it's like, as hard as it is, and speaking with my own parents, it's the most kind of loving thing you can do for the
Yeah.
people
Sure.
who are left
Yeah.
behind, because you're
Yeah.
grieving. You only want to honor what they want, and you're
Yeah.
trying to walk through the next day. So, as hard as it is for people to have those conversations, you're doing it for people that you love.
Right.
Yeah. Of
And I
course.
think people get very stuck on the point that like, this is
Yeah.
about them, and it really isn't. It's
Yeah.
it's about the other people.
Yeah.
But Erin, we should talk a little bit about maybe the next segment too, like college planning, people, healthcare
Oh, yeah.
proxies, all
Yeah.
those things.
Mhm.
Not
I
get,
was just gonna mention
yeah,
that.
yeah, you do not get.
I was just
notified.
gonna mention that. Yeah.
And a
That's
lot of
crazy that
families
at
don't
18,
think
yeah.
about that.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
think about that. You think, well, I'm paying the tuition, certainly.
Hello.
You seem to know where I live.
I'm paying the health insurance.
You don't necessarily get the grades unless the child signs over
Very
authorization.
true. Very true.
Crazy.
Yes, yes. As I learned.
It should totally be tuition based. So who gets the grades? If I'm paying half the tuition, I should at least see half of those grades.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, things to think about.
But yeah, we only have a few minutes before we'll break, but then continue on
Yeah.
to talk real estate with Sharon McNamara and Alyssa Wallace. Is it Talk Real Estate Roundtable? Is that
Yes.
the,
Talk Real Estate Roundtable.
and do you guys still podcast that?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, talkrealestateroundtable.com. You can go to your podcast app. I'm plugging our
Nice.
show on
I
there,
know,
sorry.
that's fine. That's fine.
Nice.
I don't know any other my show is technically wrapping up, but I'll stick around and we'll continue. And any I don't know, any closing comments, we talked a lot about divorce and division of assets and things to be aware of. Does anyone have any I don't know, advice or closing comments for our listeners in terms of do's and don'ts, or things that work well, things that don't? I don't know.
Right. Right.
That's all right.
I guess I know what I had mentioned on one of the breaks to Alyssa. I think one of the things that people need to be mindful of when they're getting divorced is at the end of the day, it's really like a business transaction.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
the problem with a divorce is that it's so hard to do business with your family, right? People always say, don't go into business with your family and your friends.
Yeah.
Especially when emotions are at the
And your emotions
highest
are at
ever.
the highest.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to sort of be a little bit dispassionate about, breaking up a business, or, okay, I'm going to have to take a small business loan and buy out my business partner. And people can do that all day long and make the right decision for their business.
Yeah.
And effectively what you're doing is you're dealing with assets, right? So it's sort of the same idea, but it's so much harder to do when you've got your kids involved,
Yeah.
when you've got someone who you love or loved, or, love is obviously a spectrum. So it's harder to make those decisions. And then sometimes because things are clouded, people make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So the more, and that's really where the professionals come in, right? You need folks that can take that 10,000 foot view and
Yeah.
say, okay,
Can be
this is-
dispassionate
right?
about it.
Can be
Right.
dispassionate about it, because it's hard to do that in your own life.
Yeah.
Does time, a divorce takes a long time, and time heals certain wounds, right? So I almost feel like in the financial world anyway, like making big financial decisions, especially like post death of a spouse, it's always, the advice is generally, don't worry about it. Give yourself time. You'll make a more clear decision. Does that ring true at all through divorce, or do people just kind of want to get done with it and move on with their life, and they can't move on until, or?
I think the longer, divorces can be done very quickly, or sometimes they take years.
Yeah.
I think the longer the divorce goes on, a lot of times people do sort of adjust their feelings, right? Like they kind of come to the realization that this is over, and now we're,
Yeah.
living our separate lives. And so sometimes, I think it is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I always feel like as hard as it is the day you get divorced, I always feel like folks, if you catch up with them a year or two later, they're usually in a better place.
Yeah.
So it's a dark time, right? I mean, it's a tough time, but I feel like people do usually come out better on the other side. And so that's, I guess, a gleam of hope.
Yeah,
in what
even
we
if
do.
like small things can be done at the, like custody of the children and things like that, those
Yeah.
obviously need to be done at the very beginning. And even if there are small steps people can take, and agree
Right.
on at the beginning, and then maybe over time as emotions calm down and people start to emotionally move on and things like that, I would imagine it would be easier.
Right. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, as time goes on, people do start to move on with their own lives. Maybe they meet somebody, they can start to see a future,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem so
It's not as dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And you were saying, in certain divorce agreements, certain things are permanent. I forget the words you use. Certain things are permanent and certain things are not. And if you're
Right.
making permanent decisions, right, might be better to do that with a clear mind and not
Right. Maybe
really high
not the,
emotions.
the
Yeah,
day
that's
after
good.
you found
That's
out
a good
that
point.
your spouse was cheating or something like that. Probably not the time to make a big financial
Yes,
decision.
like Sharon was
Yeah.
mentioning,
Yes.
selling a piece of real estate like the day
Right.
after someone
Yeah.
found out about an affair might
wanna take a
be the
breath.
best.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
And that's why you want to
yeah.
rely on those professionals, because they also
Yeah,
create that
yeah.
buffer and kind of can put the starts and stops on, when it's appropriate. And,
Yeah.
I guess my only advice is like, the only way to get through it is to walk through it and just, try to find someone who's maybe knows the path, I guess
Yeah.
that would be my summary a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to give out, you guys have been awesome. I'm going to give out your contact info one more time. Thank you for your time this morning and your expertise. I thought the conversation was great, and we'll certainly have to schedule another show where we talk about other transitional periods in life or transitional events in life, death of a spouse, for example, or death of a parent, or, maybe marriage. Let's stop talking about death and divorce.
Yeah.
We could also
Right.
marriage and new children and
in
starting a
life.
family.
Having a new dog.
Having a dog.
Dog when you die.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah,
big issue.
second marriage. We could talk about that, but would love to have you ladies back. So
Same.
we're not really going anywhere, but my
No.
show is wrapping up, and we'll stick around for the next hour on Talk Real Estate Roundtable. But I just wanted to thank you guys and give out your contact information one more time in case our listeners want to contact you directly. So again, we had Amy Hubert Masferrer, who's our real estate attorney, Sherman Law, timshermanlaw.com.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you. And Allison Walsh, family law attorney, walshlawoffice.com.
Allison Walsh.
Sorry. Oh, darn. Allison with two L's. AllisonWalshLaw.com. Thank you. And then Erin Nally, estate planning attorney, StarboardLegal.com. Great. Thank you so much, ladies. You're listening to McNamara on Money. I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. You can find out more about me at McNamaraFinancial.com or McNamaraoftheMerrimack.com if you're listening in the Merrimack Valley. We also have our podcast, McNamara on Money, on your podcatcher. Is that the right term? You're younger than me. Is that the right term?
Podcatcher?
Isn't that like a podcast
I've never
app?
heard
Is
of-
it? Oh,
I've never
all
heard
right. I just stated
podcatcher.
myself. All right, that's not a thing.
Sounds great.
Just
though.
kidding. That's not a thing. Forget I said that. Have a good.
Podcatcher.
All right. Have a good morning, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.
WATD FM Marshfield, WBMS Brockton. The South Shore's first choice for live team coverage of breaking news, emergency traffic, and severe weather. WATD. Streaming online at 959WATD.com. And with your smart speaker, just by saying play WATD.
CBS News Brief. More severe weather is in the forecast this weekend. National Weather Service meteorologist Mark Chenard.
There was some pretty significant flash flooding in Pensacola and that vicinity. They're actually going to get another round of thunderstorms and heavy rainfall here. Doesn't look like it will be as bad as, but given how much rain's fallen, there could be some additional issues with that.
The Justice Department released a scathing report about the Minneapolis Police Department. Correspondent Willie James Inman.
The report found police had used dangerous techniques for years against people committing even the most minor offenses.
The Pittsburgh synagogue shooting suspect was found guilty on all counts. New Light congregation Stephen Cohen.
In the 4.5 years since the event, he has not said a word. We don't know what he thinks. We don't know what goes through his head. I don't want to know.
He could face the death sentence. CBS News Brief, I'm Wendy Gillette.
news, weather,
traffic. 95.9 WATD.
959WATD.com.
64 cloudy degrees around the South Shore. It's now 10:01. Good morning. I'm David Cedrone, WATD News. Well, here's what's happening. A boat and dock caught fire in Onset sometime after 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Mutual aid included firefighters from Bourne responded to the scene on the Onset Bay Marina on Green Street. An approximately 26-foot vessel was reported fully engulfed along the dock it was tied to. No injuries were reported. It was not immediately clear how the fire started. A Juneteenth event in Brockton has been postponed. WATD's Dan McCready has the story.
Mayor Robert Sullivan tells WATD News the event at the fairgrounds was postponed due to weather.
The national holidays on Monday. Unfortunately, the weather, the Juneteenth event at the Brockton Fairgrounds, hosted by the African American Association, has been postponed 1 week. I was notified this morning. But then there is an event, Juneteenth celebration at the library at 2 o'clock, the main library downtown. And then on the actual holiday at 2 o'clock outside City Hall, Harambe, which is Jackie Jones and Gwen Knowles, two Brocktonians, hosting an event as well. So there's a lot going up for the holiday. And if you're a Brocktonian or if you want to visit us, we welcome you.
Our entire interview with Brockton Mayor Robert Sullivan can be found on our website, 959WATD.com. Dan McCready, WATD News.
All right, thanks again. Also over in Bridgewater, their third annual Juneteenth celebration has been canceled as well. Bridgewater Community for Civil Rights made the announcement on their Facebook page saying the cancellation was due to the weather. The event was scheduled to start at 3 p.m. Saturday.
This Father's Day weekend is going to be starting off on the wet side. Area of low pressure is slowly going to work its way through southern New England for the entire weekend. And now we will be into periods of rain this morning, and there could be some locally heavy spots, but most of the heaviest rain should be out at sea. And as we get into the afternoon, it'll be easing up a little bit, tapering back to more in the way of shower activity, although a cooler day. Winds out of the northeast this morning becoming northerly, 5 to 15 miles an hour. And with that wind off the water, we're going to be looking at highs in the mid 60s. And for tonight, stays cloudy, a few showers, pockets of drizzle and some fog. Overnight lows in the mid 50s. Father's Day, we start off with a couple of early morning showers around, but otherwise the better part of the day is going to stay dry with just mainly cloudy conditions. Although late in the afternoon, there could be another shower moving through. Highs again in the mid 60s. For Monday, we'll see some sunshine, although a fair amount of clouds around as well, with highs in the upper 60s to near 70, and there will be the threat of a late day shower. Tuesday, look for partial sunshine, a little bit of a warming trend as temperatures reach into the low 70s. For WATD, I'm Precision Weather Forecasting Meteorologist Bill Guile.
All right, thanks, Bill. Taking a look at the traffic on Route 3 southbound, a little heavy 18 to Derby Street 3 northbound. Gets busy before and after Route 53. Everything looking good down the Cape. Sagamore, Bourne Bridges are fine. 95 northbound, a little slow after the Dedham Street overpass at the top. 24 is okay, top to bottom. Lower end of 128 and 93 are clear on the expressway northbound. Gets a little busy getting by the Neponset on ramp. Then you're looking good into town. Southbound's clear getting out of the city. Braintree, Boston to Braintree. Downtown area, the Sumner Tunnel is open and all the airport tunnels are looking good right now. Tobin's fine both ways. A lower deck of 93 is looking good in from Somerville. And all the river roads are clear along the Charles. 64 here in Marshfield at 10:05. I'm David Cedrone, WATD News.
Talk Real Estate with Sharon McNamara, sponsored by Boston Connect Real Estate Services.
Hi, I'm Sharon McNamara, and you are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. Let me share a little bit about my background before we get started. I am the broker owner of Boston Connect Real Estate, a boutique real estate firm that is home to over 30 real estate sales and marketing consultants who service home buyers and home sellers throughout Boston, the South Shore, the South Coast, and Cape Cod. Our firm takes pride in assisting our clients in the next chapter of their lives by taking a holistic approach to their real estate endeavors. We believe that every move should be a moving experience. Every week, my real estate team member, Mary Baker, and I, along with the director of Boston Connect Real Estate, Melissa Wallace, provide you with our unique marketing approach to selling homes and share with you our expertise in navigating the home buying process. We like to mix it up sometimes, so not only will you hear our perspective on real estate topics, but you will hear the expert thoughts and opinions of some of our real estate agents at Boston Connect Real Estate and the preferred professionals that we trust. Be part of our roundtable. If you have any questions during the show, please call 781-837-4900. We'd love to talk real estate. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts at Talk Real Estate Roundtable. If you would like a one-on-one consultation with me and my team or one of the dedicated agents at Boston Connect Real Estate to discuss your real estate needs, you can connect with us at bostonconnect.com or 781-826-8000. Now, sit back, relax, take good notes, and let's talk real estate.
And hello to all our South Shore neighbors. You are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. My name is Melissa Wallace, and I am actually at the WATD studio here in Marshfield, and I'm joined by 4 lovely ladies in person and 1 lovely lady on our boat. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. For those of you who have been listening to WATD all morning, we were guests on McNamara on Money. So I also have Alyssa McNamara here in studio with me.
Good morning.
Good morning. As you grab your microphone. We've been doing this for 2 hours already.
Give me a minute. I got to do an outline for another 60 minutes.
So we were guests on your show, Alyssa, McNamara on Money, and we have 3 guests in studio. We're going to continue our conversations, but I'm going to reintroduce everybody who is joining us today. Amy Hubert Masferrer, real estate attorney with Sherman Law. We have Erin, Nally, estate planning attorney, Starboard. See, you said
sorry.
Starboard.
I know. I'm making you overthink it. I know. I'm making you overthink it. I know.
Starboard Legal, and Allison Walsh, family law attorney, Walsh Law Office. I'm going to give you guys a second to reintroduce yourself. Amy, you have been on our show several times, and again, our show now is Talk Real Estate Roundtable. But you've been on our show several times. We love having you. We love having you at our office. We just think that you're like the greatest thing ever.
Oh, well, thank you. That's why I keep coming. Somebody has to think it.
Everybody thinks it.
Oh, sweet.
And we were able to, Sharon and I, attend a class that you were sort of hosting, and you ladies were there, and we sort of fell in love with you guys too. So we were like, let's do a marathon show.
Yes.
We roped you into it too.
Yes.
So I'm just going to give you guys a moment to reintroduce yourself to any listeners who didn't catch the first 2 hours of our show. So here you go.
Perfect. So I'm Amy Hubert Masferrer. I am an attorney at Sherman Law. We have locations in Hingham and Plymouth. And I've been doing real estate for about 20 years. And we're about to talk about transitional listings, which is kind of a class that I put together. And we have 2 of the best here who are going to introduce themselves to talk about estate planning and also family law and divorce. So thanks.
Perfect.
Hi, good morning. My name is Allison Walsh. I am a divorce and family law attorney. My firm is called Walsh Law Office. I went out on my own about 6 years ago, but I've been a divorce attorney for almost 20 years now, dating myself. And we have an office in Hyannis as well. So if there's any Cape Cod listeners, but we're primarily based out of Hingham, and I'm looking forward to talking real estate this morning.
Continuing on.
And
Erin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Nally. I'm from Starboard Legal, and I do business planning and estate planning for families and small businesses, and help everyone plan for life's what ifs.
Yeah. I love, see, we were talking, I think you made a comment like, something about, like planning, like nobody likes to like read the directions or whatever. And I'm like, I'm totally the person that like, when you get a game, like I'm the one to explain the directions to everybody. I love being told like, okay, this is how I liked it. Because I don't like the, what would that person like? Like what would, so I am that person. That's why I'm like, if I bought a house by myself, no children, who would I leave it to? What do I'm the planner. So, but Alyssa, we're roping you into hosting our show.
I know.
Too.
I wasn't anticipating that.
So yeah, why don't we just sort of continue on with our discussion that we've been, talking about all morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, we spent a good amount of
And let Alyssa, introduce yourself as well.
I certainly will. And realizing that I didn't give you the opportunity to do that on my show, but everyone knows you, Sharon.
That's okay.
Even people that think they know me are, oh, you're Sharon. Yeah, no, I get that a lot. But I'm Alyssa McNamara Reed. I'm a certified financial planner practitioner with McNamara Financial. We have offices in Marshfield and Chelmsford, Mass. And this is my 20-ish years of experience. This is my 20th year in the business as well. So thank you for having me. We spent the first couple hours talking a lot about issues surrounding divorce, emotional issues, financial issues, real estate issues, estate planning, things like that. Maybe we'll get, Sharon, you wanted to get a little bit more into estate planning and issues surrounding maybe estate planning and real estate and thinking about real estate like as your biggest asset. And so why don't we just maybe touch on, I don't know, just even quickly, like the importance of estate planning, Erin. I mean, I still meet a lot of people in their 40s and 50s that have never done estate planning. They could be buried, they can have children, and sometimes it just doesn't make its way to the top of someone's list. And, you know, maybe not, and not even necessarily related to like the level of assets, right? I meet people of all different means and net worths that, and some of them haven't ever done that planning. And, you know, sometimes I hear, well, we could never agree on someone to take our 4 children or whatever it is, or we could never find someone that would take our, you know, and maybe there's a reason that they never got to it, or maybe they just didn't understand the importance of it. So if you could just spend some time on maybe the importance of that, and is it related to net worth and life situation, et cetera?
Yeah. So, it's funny when it comes to estate planning, it's an easy thing to kick down the road, right?
Sure.
Because no one wants to think about dying or being incapacitated.
Yeah.
So if we can just ignore it and pretend like it's not going to happen, then we'll just continue on our merry way. Unfortunately, life doesn't really work like that. But that's why I tell people really what it comes down to is your signature and the things that you're responsible for, or the things that you need to give directions for. My children often need to be told where the water is, where the cups are. Do you know what I mean? So like, if these sort of things are taking place on a day-to-day, then when it comes to where my accounts are, where my investment accounts, retirement accounts, you know, like where are your assets? And you had made a point earlier about with paperless billing and, you know, we don't get
statements on financial accounts
in paperless statements. It's not a matter of, you know, if something happens to someone, whether they're incapacitated or passed, it's not a matter of waiting around for their mail to see what statement's going to come. And then being like, all right, we have the list of stuff that, you know what I mean? So it's like to be prepared in that during life and to stay on top of it. It's sort of it's like, oh, well, I got that set. So now I'm scot-free. Nothing's going to happen to me anymore. Even though oftentimes people think if they plan, then they're going to die the next day. Right. Because, well, now that I've done it, now it's going to be used, you know, but that's not the case. So, and then the other real big importance for, I feel, estate planning is the way that your assets are owned. Because if something, God forbid, does happen, are you going to probate? Are people going to have access to whatever asset you have? If you've become incapacitated, are your accounts and properties, are they going to be able to be maintained? Who's maintaining them? How long is it going to be until they have the authority to maintain them? So if that's all outlined and squared away, you pick up the handle on whatever it is you're talking about and you just keep walking, as opposed to like having a 52 card pickup where you're like, where are the cards? And we got to go ask the judge for this. And we got to do this, you know, where oftentimes you could be like, oh, see this piece of paper, sign my name to it. Thanks.
Yeah. If we think about like events that would trigger someone, or the necessity, in our professional opinion, anyone, but would trigger the importance of doing estate planning, I could think of home ownership. Because like up until that point, someone might have like, you know, a 401k through their job with a direct beneficiary designation, bank account, those usually don't have the direct beneficiary designation, but you know, earlier in life anyway, you might not have like, you know, a couple $100,000 in there, it might be small amounts, but you can add direct beneficiaries to banks via transfer on death designations. I think at all banks, I don't know, in my experience anyway. So triggering event would be purchase of real estate, because there's not a beneficiary, like you pass away, there's not a named beneficiary on that type of asset by default. I think obviously having a child, right? Because, you know, you could give your opinion, but from my opinion, being able to name guardian if mom or dad, you know, passed simultaneously is very important versus the state deciding guardianship
of your child. And then, what are some other triggering events? I guess aging, but hopefully someone did it before then, aging and bequesting, right? When you get to a point in life where, or I don't know if people get to this point in life where, well, yeah, I would say most people get to a point in life, if you're in your 80s or 90s and you never really done that planning, and maybe you get to a point where bequesting becomes more important, right? I won't live forever, and who do I want my assets to go to? And is it, more complicated than just beneficiary designations? What are some other triggering events, in your opinion, that would make it really important for someone to prepare documents?
Turning 18.
Yeah. Okay. I wondered about that because
we become adults at 18.
privacy.
We don't, once we turn 18, all of the adult sort of things that are locked in, right? As far as locked in, just being an adult, right? We were talking about college tuitions and stuff, and it's no big deal for the college to accept tuition payments from parents, but they're not going to call them if something happened, if their kid, got, broke a leg or whatever it is, so those can be a good triggering event as well, because that's when it's going to come into play. That's the point at which you become an independent.
So if your 18-year-old child has an accident and goes to the hospital, and you go to the hospital to meet him or her there, and you're trying to get information from the doctors or nurses without is it the HIPAA? Is it the HIPAA thing? The HIPAA document?
Waiver,
without that document, they're not talking to you.
They shouldn't. I mean,
and maybe the kid,
no, the kid might say yes.
Or depending on what state the kid is in, they might not be able to give authority at that point. That's a terrible thing to think about, but they might not be able to say, yep, if my mom comes to visit, you can speak with her. Right. So, okay.
Well, even sometimes too, they don't realize, hey, can you call my mom?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're thinking their mom's going to be called no matter what.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happened.
But the mom would still have to show up with the HIPAA document, right? Like they're still not going to.
Not necessarily. The kid is like awake and talking. They can say, "Oh, that's my mom."
Of course.
And she's going to get pulled into the car.
Yeah.
I mean, I have someone who my stepson just graduated from high school. So we're sort of in that. He turned 18 a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think he realizes the rights he does have, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
is that a good thing in some
No, I mean, I gotta say,
I don't have an 18-year-old, but
I'm a little happy that he's still kind of like, oh, can I do this? Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't think he has any clue that he can go and sign for things, I mean, go to the doctor himself. Yeah.
That's like when parents have UTMA financial accounts for their kids and at 18 or 21 in Massachusetts, they're kind of like, well, does my kid have to know that I have this money here for them? And well, because some kids that young are still maybe not mature enough to handle certain things, but they're still kids.
And there's decision
making.
So
turning 18. Yeah.
I do have one story about this. So my son had a college roommate who went to the hospital with appendicitis. His mother was undergoing treatment for cancer, and he was like, I don't want to burden my mother. I'm fine. Tragically enough, he was diagnosed with cancer. So he decided that he was not going to tell his parents and start up his own care because he didn't want to burden his mother, who was undergoing treatment for breast cancer. Very noble, very kind. But, I was put in the position where I was like, I know his mother wants to know. I know his mother wants to know, and she wants to be able to orchestrate his care. So there I am kind of intervening to say please tell your mother. But the hospital couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything. He had made the decision. He checked himself out. He was going to kind of go through graduation and then deal with it after. And it was just like, no, you can't do that. So, luckily my son told me I can kind of intervene as another mom. And, he was able to reach out to her and thankfully both of them are okay. But those situations, there are moments when 18-year-olds think that they're more of an adult than they really are.
Sure,
so it's important to have those conversations.
Yeah. So turning 18 is certainly a triggering event. I also would say owning another piece of real estate in another state, right? To avoid probate in multiple states would be a good reason to maybe, this is, home, draft trust and things like that. So you can avoid probate in multiple states. And then I guess for other triggering events, divorce, right? And we talked about that a little bit. Maybe in advance, maybe how about second marriages? We didn't really talk about that much, but can you somewhat touch on, how is, I would imagine, the estate planning process and the discussions you're having with someone who's either about to enter a second marriage, or you're meeting with a couple that maybe it's a second marriage for one or both, and there's kids from another marriage and the complications surrounding that. Can you kind of talk through those conversations? I imagine they're much more complicated.
Yeah,
at that point.
yeah, exactly. It's really just continuing to have the conversation,
Yeah.
the open conversation about what the full story is, and what they want to see happen if something happens. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and then, being able to say, okay, this is what you want. Okay, so what's going to happen then is, and then you drop the bouncing ball at the beginning, right? And say, okay, so like your kids aren't going to get anything until the second of you passes away. Oh, wait, hold on a second. That might not be for another, 20, 30 years or whatever it is.
Especially if they marry younger.
Exactly.
Not
So,
uncommon.
and so then when you drop the bouncing
Yes.
ball, play out the scenario, then individuals can be like, okay, wait a second. That's not the scenario that I want. And then we talk about, and be like, okay, well then here's another option. Well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And so that's why it's very custom to the individual.
Well, I liked what you said on McNamara Money, where you start the conversation off with, where do you want this to be at the end? Like, where do you want to see it? Because we'll sort of get you there, but we'll explore avenues of how to get to that end sort of goal. Unfortunately,
everyone's values and opinions on things are all so different.
Yeah.
Right? So you might be like, I don't care if my kids get all the money at 18, they're super responsible, they've got it all together. And then someone else might be like, oh, my kids can never have the money.
Yeah.
It's going to stay in trust for them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It could be like, or maybe, you know what? I don't really care about having to pay those taxes.
Yeah. And
or the opposite.
It's also, you never know until you're there. So right now, and I'll just use myself as an example in extremes, but, right now I could say, I want everything to go to my mother, or, but maybe when the time comes to it, for some reason, something happens in my life and I do have to make that decision right then and there. Maybe that relationship isn't good, or maybe, and I feel like it happens a lot with people who are getting married or getting divorced. It's like you had the best intentions, but then when the decision is right in front of you, you sort of think differently.
Well, and that's also another really, really good reason to make sure that you're addressing it every couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Because things change so frequently and you don't realize it because time goes by so fast, right? And then all of a sudden 3 years goes by and you're like, hold on a second, I put who down as my beneficiary?
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? Like, I used to work at the state treasurer's office, and I did a lot of work for the retirement board. And I can't tell you how many times people will have put down a beneficiary that was like, they were planning to get married. It was a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
And then 30 years down the
Oh, my God.
line,
My
this
gosh.
person is being called to say, hey, so-and-so passed away and you're their beneficiary.
Yeah.
Usually they'd say, listen,
At that point, you don't have an accurate phone number for that.
yeah, right. But like,
Yeah.
oftentimes they'd say, listen, this isn't meant for me. Like,
Disclaim it.
but other times they won't.
Yeah.
And they'll
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, I haven't talked to her in 40 years. She must have wanted me to have that. It's like,
yeah.
but there's nothing that can be done about that, right? Because because that's who the beneficiary is. But that's why we say, like, it's not a one and done thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look at it every 3 years.
What's your process with your clients? Do you reach out on a periodic basis or recommend that they reach out?
Every 3 years.
Because I easily 10 or 15 years, sometimes my clients,
I've
time
had
will
so
go
many people
on and
come
they haven't
in.
revisited.
Yeah.
And so, and I find some attorneys are kind of proactive about, hey, what's anything going on? Have things changed? Do we need to meet? And some aren't. So what's your process with your
So
clients?
I'll tell them right away that we'll review, like every 3 years, we'll review the plan.
Yeah.
And say, like, basically do exactly what we did at our first meeting. Right?
Yeah.
Tell me what you have. I have your planning. This is what's going to happen if something happened last week. Right. And then we make sure that everything then still fits. So ideally every 3 years, I would reach out to say, hey, happy 3 years.
Yeah.
You know? And then, so, you know, if you feel like this is something, I hope everyone does take advantage of it. But
I would imagine it's a
sometimes
small
people are
percentage
like-
of people that take advantage of
Yeah,
it. Is it?
very
Yeah.
small, very
Yeah.
small.
Because everyone's kind of like, oh, nothing has changed.
Yeah. And then sometimes when they do, it's usually the ones that are like, oh, we won't see him in 3 years. We've only have so many people to choose from, you know, and then 3 years later, they're like, we have even less people to choose from.
Yeah. I have it's just from one experience, like talking about revising the will, often family members will say like, you know, that they have or intend to. And I have a situation right now where the daughter thought she inherited the property under the will. The estate attorney actually made a mistake, told her she did, and she sold it. So numerous layers were missed there, and we're kind of undoing that, correcting that. But her understanding was always that the will was changed. It just never was. And whether that fell on the attorney or,
oh my God.
So, you know,
sometimes they're drafted but never signed.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
hap-
it's the last man standing. It's the
Exactly.
last document standing. So undoing all that, which kind of brings me to my question, Erin, like, who do you meet with? So if you have a couple saying they're in a second marriage, are you meeting with that spouse individually? Or if you have, you know, the kids were rolling in the parents to get their will done, are you meeting with them individually? Because there's the whole question of influence.
Yeah,
and what's said.
that's huge.
And in
Yeah.
this situation, we have warring siblings who are now looking for the asset. They're all, mom is running around telling everybody that, or did tell everybody, you're my favorite, you're getting everything, and they all believed her, you know. So you know, which is lovely, but you know, when you get down to the
In black and
documents,
white.
right,
Oh, wow.
right.
Yeah.
So a lot of children in particular think the intentions are what stands versus the piece of paper.
Well,
So-
it's the road to
Oh,
hell,
that's too
right?
Right, exactly.
I can't stress the importance of having an individual conversation with the individual that is creating the plan.
Right.
You can have a family member pay for it. You could have family member, you want to have them sit in, fine, but we have to sit down and have a conversation so that I know you're able.
You need to
Yeah.
make sure that
Right.
they're not being influenced.
Yeah,
So they can
exactly.
verbalize what they
Right.
want
Right.
without like a kid being like, yes,
Right.
mom, that's
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah,
understand what is being transferred.
Sure.
Do you know, or what's
Sure.
being done, what they're signing, right? Because it's a lot of power in your signature. And so
Right.
if you're handing it over willy-nilly because, you know, your family member has got a, you know, banana to your back, then,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, that's not, you can't make decisions like that.
Right.
They're not valid.
Right. And we see it more and more. And, you know, to Sharon's point, talking about the real estate person, you know, what we're looking for is who has the power to sell. Is that, and that can come from a court order if there's just, you know, a dispute or there isn't a clear directive,
Okay.
or, you know, if the person has a will, that's giving the directive of who is going to pick up where this owner left off and be able to finish this transaction. And, you know, in my experience, that is the first kind of question you have to have in this situation that I was talking about. The realtor had assumed that because she was told that the person had inherited the property, but when we dug deeper, that was not the case. And the you know, and was even told by the estate attorney that was the case. So when I am representing a buyer who's buying an estate, I'm asking for the actual documents. I'm not
Yeah.
taking anyone's word. I'm going to see a
Yeah.
copy of the will.
Yeah.
I'm going to see a copy of the trust.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a trustee certificate that says that person is still alive,
Mhm.
valid. And so you can't just be like, well, this was all taken care of. There's paperwork behind the scene.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it just doesn't work that way. And a lot of times attorneys who don't do their due diligence, that should have been caught at the closing table, right? Like that there was no chain, there was a break in the chain there. And the assumption that the daughter had inherited the property was inaccurate, and that property was sold. So you know, just the importance of really looking at that. If you want your intentions to be known without as much hassle to your children, that's where you need a will. You can have a designation. If you're a husband and wife, you can have a designation. The property will pass automatically through how the tenancy is held through the deed. But without that, you're going to court to get what's called, a license to sell, basically appointing someone, the authority to step into those shoes, which takes time. Yeah.
I think sometimes, unfortunately, also people don't like, my clients and your clients, I'm sure, like when they're in meetings with us and we're explaining things to them and things make perfect sense at the time. But then I kind of think we all know that, like, a week later, could they repeat and really understand the conversations we had? Maybe not always.
Right.
And so I also wonder if sometimes things just get lost, or they forget, or they misunderstood, and that confusion, that's unfortunate, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right. And there was
one thing, and that's really not what it was. And
right. It was really for the attorneys to catch. Everyone was operating under the assumption that that things had changed. The daughter was under the understanding that she owned the property. But again, my job is a paper trail. Like that is what I'm looking for.
I almost wish maybe this isn't like, I almost wish, estate planning, like wills and trust, right? These are can be very lengthy, very specific documents with certain language and things like that. And I understand the reason for all that. I almost wish there was like, do you guys give like bullet points? Like, okay, but here's the document, but this is what it really accomplished. Like, is that you do that for your clients so that they can understand, like, because that's what the client would look at and understand. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I just don't see those very often, because I would see the actual documents.
I often speak in terms of like
how people
ridiculous examples or like, so for example, a revocable trust, right? That's a little red wagon to me. If you we create this trust and it's full of all this great language, and it says, if you stub your toe, this happens. And if you break your finger, this happens. But it's only as good as what it's carrying around. Right. So you can have a beautiful trust document that's signed, but if nothing's in it,
right,
then it's just an expensive stack of papers.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? So you got to put whatever it is. You got to put the house in the wagon. You got to put your investment accounts in the wagon, and then you're carrying the wagon around.
Yeah. You have to direct assets to there at some point.
It's revocable, right? You add stuff in, you take stuff out, you do whatever it is you want to do. Something happens to you and the handle drops. Who's going to pick up the handle?
Yeah.
Who's going to keep walking?
Yeah.
You've identified who that is going to be.
Yeah.
They pick it up, they keep walking. As opposed to, you might be going to probate court and it's 52 card pickup.
Yeah.
Right? Where is everything?
Yeah.
Like it might get into the wagon afterwards, but you're still going to court to do that, because wills don't avoid probate. Where there's a will, there's a probate.
Right.
This is something that's often very much
That is a
understood.
common myth.
Yeah. But like, you were saying that you recommend revisiting your estate planning documents every few years, and like 3 years down the road, I have to imagine that the client doesn't remember a lot of, they're not going to remember the specifics, and they're certainly not going to like take out a trust or a will and like read through it. Right. So is there do you have like a bullet
summary.
point? Yeah. Like a summary that they could at least reference and say, oh wait, something has changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll give, it's basically a trust summary.
Okay. Perfect.
That
I need to
has
see one of those at some point.
Each paragraph, it sort of gives the basic summary of that
Like
paragraph.
a client friendly.
Yeah. And then if
they
you
can
want to
understand
zoom in
it.
on
Yeah.
it, go into
Sure.
the trust and zoom in on exactly what that language is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Are those common? I feel like I've never seen, I don't get the whole estate planning binder. I usually just get like the trust piece or.
Oh yeah.
Are those pretty common? I don't know.
It's common at Starboard Legal.
It's not common.
I've never seen one.
Right.
And people will hand me and they'll be like, I have
ladies
no
would
idea.
Right.
what
And
it is.
I'll get handed paperwork
Yeah.
and they'll be like, so they, she left me the property and here's her trust and here's her will. And you're
And
opening
that's
up
like,
and you're
nope,
like,
that's not what
she
happened.
did
Yeah.
not leave you the property.
Yeah.
She gave a life estate to your sibling
Mm.
and we have a problem,
Mhm.
so, and it's very important that you work with someone who's gonna explain it to you.
Yeah. And that's a very, very scary story that you just told, Amy, because I mean, that's frightening. I can't even imagine being that agent and that happening. And hopefully it wasn't one of my agents. I'm sure I would have heard about it by now.
No, it wasn't. And honestly, it wasn't the agent's fault. He had spoken to the estate attorney who said, nope, it's all set. So, but
Things happen.
really the closing attorney should have caught it.
Yeah.
The fact, I often, when I am doing estate sales, I'm asking for the trust, I'm asking for the will, and people get very like, that's private. I'm like, well, I understand that, but I'm looking for very specific things. I have to validate that that you have the authority to do what you're saying to
Oh,
do.
sure. Yeah.
So, it's like awkward conversations. We can have it now or,
It's
and
gonna
then
come up
it's
no
gonna
matter
come out.
what. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're a
So-
professional and you're certain.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I'm
based on your profession,
not
yeah,
interested.
yeah.
I'm like, I
This
read a
isn't
lot
my
of things.
first deal,
I know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not my business, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I have a good scary story too, and Amy, you will be tied into this one at some point soon. So situation where, let's just say, a couple there's siblings, it's a second marriage, and so there's step siblings, I guess, and I guess mom in her wisdom thought, so the stepdad had passed away, but in her wisdom thought, okay, this is how we're going to handle things. I'm going to put two of you on the deed. So just put two of the daughters on the deed, and then decided that the other daughter would be sort of the executor of, the will and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Then, they thought that this was a great idea. Everybody always gets along at the beginning of an estate sale. And I have to tell you, for some reason or another, money does crazy things to people. And there's always the one sibling that will say, well, you don't need the money, I do. Let's, there's always those types of conversations.
I did. Yeah, that happens.
Yes, right. And why are you getting more? I took care of my, like, there's just all these things that we're brought into. As the real estate agent, it's funny that we have these conversations too, and people wouldn't think that we're a part of that whole thing. But that's why I have to lean into Amy for those situations, because, okay, who is really on the deed? But in this situation, it was everything is going to be divided by 4. In the will, it says that. So guess what? Mom no longer owns a house. She put it in two of the other siblings, one stepchild and one real child. They're really the ones on the deed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
mom doesn't have a house to sell, according to, so even though the will says everything will be divided by 4, that family isn't getting along at that point. Guess what? That's not happening.
Right.
And now and I know things change. So that's why you need professionals on your side to say that that is a really not a great idea to do it that way.
Right. And you'll see that a lot with family members. They're like, well, I don't want any one person to have more decision-making power than the other. So they divide those tasks, but those can be competing interests when the time comes, for sure.
Can we talk about powers of attorney for a moment, like the power of attorney documents? And maybe I do want to talk about how it specifically, first of all, can you sell a piece of property with a power of attorney?
Oh, yeah.
Because you can control any financial asset, right? So you could
Mhm.
sell a piece of property with a power of attorney. So in my experience, it seems like, so there's 2 types of powers of attorney, right? There's the durable power of attorney. Those seem to be more common. And then there's something, is it called a springing power of attorney, which doesn't seem to me to be as common. I think that some people sort of and I don't know why, and maybe you can talk about why the durable power is probably just easier because you don't need like a physician involved or something, or a medical professional involved to make it become active. But I think sometimes people misunderstand the fact that if you're giving someone a durable power of attorney, they immediately could have control over your financial assets. And it's not like, and I think people kind of misunderstand that. Maybe they think, well, I would have to give them the permission, but that's not how it works at all. So can you maybe just explain that a bit?
Yeah. So with the durable power of attorney, the permission is given upon signature.
Yeah.
And it can be convenient, but it's also a significant power that you're handing over.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that it's someone that you trust. And sometimes, I've had folks that don't even tell them that it's active.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So like if I assign you as my power of attorney and I just keep my power of attorney with my financial planner, and then my financial planner says, oh, hey, Alyssa, by the way, Erin's incapacitated. Can you come sign this for her or whatever? Do you know? So, but yes. But also to your point, it can be used as a matter of convenience. Right. So
is that why they're more common, right? Because you don't need to have a medical professional involved to determine incapacity, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Right.
That's why they're more
like-
common.
Yeah. Or healthcare proxy is kind of with a medical professional. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that, but you can also limit them, right? Like you can have a power of attorney that is specifically for the transfer of a particular asset. Do you know, like if it's a closing,
Right?
Yeah,
like
and
a real
that's
estate
sort of
closing.
what,
Yeah.
what I deal
Yeah.
with for sure.
Yeah.
And I can talk to you about situations too, where sometimes that power of attorney is given not because someone's incapacitated or death, but just unavailable.
Sure.
That's how I bought my
So
house.
that's like
Yes.
is that a temporary?
It's a
Power
temporary
of
and it's
attorney or-
limited. So I have a
Yeah.
situation right now where
limited
a
power of
mother and daughter are looking for houses. The mother is going to be traveling for the next year, but wants the daughter to have the authority to not only sign offers, because
Okay.
in Massachusetts, as Sharon knows, an offer is a binding contract, but also sign the purchase and sale. So she has a power of attorney for that limited capacity only.
Got it.
So things like that. Or I frequently for sellers will have a limited power of attorney to execute documents for this transaction to this property for this period of time.
Yeah.
So we limit it, it's not the same situation as, an incapacity where you're making all financial decisions, all those things, but limited to transactions, and it can be convenient. And when we talk about, can you sell a property under power of attorney? You can. A deed typically has to be an original signature, not because it is invalid to sign it under power of attorney, but because if the buyer is using a mortgage, it is less likely that they're going to the bank itself doesn't want it signed under power of attorney, because it adds another layer of review and question for them. So frequently, if I'm trying to facilitate a transaction, I know the sellers are moving to Florida. I'm going to meet with them in advance, get their deed signed and a power of attorney. So I have that original signature to turn over, but I have the ability to sign on their behalf after reviewing documents with them.
It is kind of scary though, like the durable, like say single mom or dad, right, living in their home, and they go through their estate planning and they name like their son, for example, as their durable power of attorney. And you're right, it has to be someone that they trust, because if that son in that example, they could sell the house using that power of attorney without dad's knowledge. Like, is that? I guess it wouldn't have to be.
I mean, you have
we
tricky
could say-
situations.
I know. I was thinking
If
like
the parents are saying I'm not moving, then you have like an eviction.
Yeah.
Like it would end up in the courts.
Yeah,
Let's put it
yeah,
that
yeah.
way.
It's just like a-
It
yeah,
couldn't
it's
just be. It couldn't just be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Okay.
But with estate planning, even when we talk about, I know we're not going to touch on it too much because it's its own show, like Medicaid trusts and things like that, where
Yeah.
parents are signing over assets to have them sheltered.
Yeah.
But they very much want to stay in their home, and they very much, and then all of a sudden you have a kid who's saying like, look, I think you're declining. We could get $1 million for your home right now. That would be the beneficial for assisted living.
Yeah.
That sort of situation
Yeah.
is what kind of keeps people fearful of doing that, because
Sure.
you are surrendering some control.
Yeah, we will do a whole nother show on that.
That's a whole other show. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I had another thought about power of attorney, and then I lost it. I got distracted because I think you have a caller, Melissa, but well, if we get to the caller, I'll think of my question. It was about powers of attorney. Oh, I was just saying, oh no, go ahead and take the caller. Yeah.
Okay.
Is this Mackenzie Mack?
Is this Mackenzie McNamara from Newport, Rhode Island? I'm getting a yes from Tim. Mackenzie. Hi, Lindsay. Good. How are you?
I'm good. My mom told me to call in because you had a question about colleges and what they can tell parents.
Oh, yes.
Give your Mackenzie, let everybody know what you do for work. So I was texting Mackenzie when we were talking about the 18-year-old. So Mackenzie, let everybody know what you do so our panelists know and our listeners.
So I work in higher education. So I'm currently at Salve Regina University in Rhode Island. And most of my role focuses on health and wellness, but I also am in our on-call rotation. So when there's an emergency on campus, I go and help, and then I call parents.
So in what instances can you call parents, or can you always?
So it depends on the school and the mission of the school. So because Salve is a community-based school and we believe in the community, we probably tell more to parents than other schools would. But we fall under FERPA when it comes to academic records. So if a parent calls and was like, what did my student get on this test? I couldn't tell them that. But if they're the student who was transported to the hospital, I could say, hi, your student just went to the hospital, and here's the number to the ER so you can find out more information.
And they may or may not be able
to what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's like part of, when you're enrolling, if there's certain forms that you can sign at that point that are kind of like, like you can take my picture, that sort of thing.
Is that, so with that, is that voluntarily? Like, do you have to volunteer that in the beginning when you first start going to the school, or is it just every student? Because I would imagine if it is something that you have to volunteer for, that like you personally, Mackenzie, would have to sort of look to make sure like, okay, yes, they said that I could call mom, like type of thing. Or is it just an automatic because that's your school specific?
Or is it because they put down an emergency contact? Like, so when they are filling out paperwork at the school, they must have like, who's your emergency contact, Nens?
Right.
So both of those things are true. So for FERPA, that's the one that's held as like a law. I don't know anything about laws, but I know that one is a law. So it's the federal
Educational Record Protection Act or something like that.
It has such a good name too. It's like a Muppet, like
So FERPA, there's a FERPA release form is what it's called. And that one's really interesting because when we give presentations to new students, we're always telling them of this is your choice. If you want your parents to have access to your academic records, you can sign this form, but it's totally up to you. But what we get is a lot of parents say, hey, I'm paying your bill. If you want
100%. That's what I was just
thinking. Yeah.
I'm not paying next year's tuition, honey, if I don't get to see your grades.
Right.
That conversation.
I've actually seen divorcing parents try and work that into their agreement.
Interesting.
But you can't really bind it because you can't bind the 18-year-old,
Right.
right? So they can agree that, we'll
okay.
see the grades. But like, if you have to have a cooperative kid, right? The
Yeah.
kid at 18 can be like, I don't care what's in your
Right.
divorce agreement.
Right.
Like,
But then you don't have to, but then mom or dad wouldn't have to pay the tuition, right? Well, I guess if it's in a
Well,
divorce
that's
agreement, you
right.
would. Is that what you're
Right.
saying? You
yeah.
would.
So I mean,
see.
I think that's really, I
see.
mean, it's not really enforceable as to the kid, right?
Yeah.
Right. And the son or because I had a son, he can revoke it at any time. It's like, so we signed, there's a portal, you sign an authorization, they can make that change as it goes, as we found out.
If they're
So-
sharing the grades, they're usually pretty good, right,
Yeah.
Mackenzie? And then
Maybe
not.
Right, exactly.
I think it's more of like an ignorance is bliss kind of deal. Like a lot of students don't understand what they've just signed.
Yeah.
So for them, a lot of them are just like, oh yeah, my parents always have seen my report card. I come home from school and they've signed it.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of them don't even know that this is something that's totally up for them.
Yep.
It's definitely interesting for the students who are underage because when they turn 18, they have to re-sign a whole bunch of paperwork. So sometimes those students are actually a lot more aware because there's a change while they're in school. But I've definitely had parents in the past come with like legal signed documentations with like a power of attorney of like, my kid's 17 and you need to tell me everything. And then I've been like, I don't know anything about this, and just hand it off to someone else of like, someone else.
Right.
I don't know what this is.
Legal. Yeah.
So
And Mackenzie too, don't you? I know you've told me in the past too, like you've run into situations with parents. I won't call them helicopter parents, but like trying to get into like their kids' dorm rooms and things like that.
Mhm.
And they just don't have the right to do that, right?
Some call it just loving, attentive care. No kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
that's a little
I'm
much.
kidding. No, I get that completely. And
Unless there's a concern.
right, unless there's a concern. But yeah, it is very interesting how much control and in the land of paperless days back in my day, it got mailed home, right? So like the parents saw it. Nowadays, you're in a portal, you're logging in.
Yeah,
you
everything's
know.
online.
Right,
And sometimes
exactly.
the parents don't know how to use the internet.
Exactly. Yeah, or the kid changes the login.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm only going to be like 47 when my
Right.
kid goes to college. I'll know how to use the internet, Melissa.
Get around now, but like think about
Oh,
when,
gosh.
when a little bit older than I am.
When
you
my
know.
last one goes, like, let's be honest, we'll just take him at his word. I'm just gonna do like thumbs up, down.
You're not even going to care what his grades are. You're just going to be happy to pay that last tuition bill.
I've done so many campus tours. I'm like, I can't do this in a walker. So you look around now, make some notes if you liked it, because that's what you're getting. So,
Mackenzie, did you have any final thoughts or anything that maybe we're not even considering that you find interesting on this topic?
I think being as a parent, I would say definitely be aware of what questions can be asked and can't be asked as best as you can, because it's hard for me when parents ask me questions and I'm just like, I can't tell you that. And then sometimes they get angry and sometimes they're understanding. Like I know, like, for example, if there was a car crash on campus and you ask me, is your car totaled? I would not know that particularly. Like those are things that are in the moment, like I'm calling as like the emergency person to tell you about your kid, but there are some questions that are better the next day.
And what about like with drinking and things like that, Mackenzie, because you do handle a lot of the drug and alcohol initiatives there at the school. What about, you know, if the kids are intoxicated and they have to be transported? I mean, you can't call the parents, right? Or what do you do?
So if they're transported to the hospital, I call the parents and tell them your child's been sent to the hospital, and then I can give them like a blanket reason. So it could be a mental health concern. It could have been an alcohol poisoning situation. It could have been they had a tummy ache and wanted to see a doctor. So I can give you like the generalized reason, but I can't give you any details other than they were conscious and they were fine, or there were medical professionals on the scene who have more knowledge than I do, and you should call the hospital. So I can tell you if they were conscious, if I was talking to them, or if there was a medical provider on the scene who was giving them the care they needed. And beyond, I got nothing except for the information on how you can contact the hospital and where they went.
Right.
So
well,
scary to think about.
And this is all kind of new, right? I mean, when I went to, I'll tell a funny story because why not? But when I was in college, I got food poisoning from a Roy Rogers burger. I'm sorry if that's one of your sponsors. Really, yes. So I was really like violently sick. I ended up passing out, like cutting my eye, like this whole big thing. And I went to the hospital. They were taking care of me. They handed the phone to the doctor to talk to my mother. And the first thing he said is, well, I just want to let you know, your daughter's not pregnant, that we did a pregnancy test. And my mother literally was like, got me on the phone. She's like, how dare he question your virtue? I mean, she could not move on from this fact.
Why did he say that? Was he being funny, or was he like?
No, it was like,
legit?
it was legit, like thought that I was having extreme morning sickness. And maybe I was just like, I had a double quarter pounder with cheese. But my mother was like, and there I am reassuring my mother. I'm like, oh no, absolutely, mom. That would, there's no concern there. We have to be immaculate. Your mom
I've been
religious. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it would be an immaculate conception, if anything.
Right.
But
I don't think the doctors say stuff like that, right?
No. But I mean,
But it wasn't HIPAA was what, 1994?
Right. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But immediately handed and discussed, and there was no question there. I certainly was not asked my opinion at the time. But so times. Oh, I know. Times have changed for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Mackenzie, are you still on the phone?
I am. I didn't know if you want me to hang up or not.
Well, you could say bye.
Very, very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mackenzie.
Bye, Mackenzie.
Bye, fans. Love you.
Go, Mackenzie.
Is that for McNamara
It
Financial?
certainly is. She's been ignoring me for a little while.
I do want to. We only have about 6 minutes left, so maybe just sort of wrapping this up. And I want to give you guys the opportunity to sort of get your name out there. We want to give your phone number twice. We like to give it twice on our show. Any sort of final thoughts that you want to sort of touch upon? I know we've been together for 3 hours, but I feel like we could be together for 3 more.
Yeah.
Maybe not today.
Well, as far as estate planning is concerned, my suggestion would be to think about what you want and how you see things going if something happens. We're only getting out of here one way, so it's going to happen at some point. Ideally, not for a long, long time, but you got to think about how you see that bouncing ball bouncing, and then come on in and see if it bounces the way you want it to. And if it doesn't, then that's where we fill in the gaps. Do you know what I mean? Or that's where you fill it in with anyone. Do you know? But really think about what you want, and then whether you think it's going to go that way.
Yeah.
And on that point too, Allison, I think it's really important too, is that sometimes like you don't know what you don't know. So I know that when my girls were going to school, when they went to undergrad, and we were doing our will over at that time, and I remember the suggestion to me, which I thought was great, and I would have never thought of it, was, okay, so Casey and Mackenzie are back to back in school. If something should happen to you and Mark at the same exact time, and you want everything divided 50-50, is that really not fair, quote unquote, to Mackenzie, because she's the year younger than Casey? So what we did at that time is we said, okay, Mackenzie's school will be paid, you know, and then from there things would be divided evenly. But then another life-changing thing that happens, and you brought this up earlier, Alyssa, why it's so important, and Allison, I'm going to be calling you, by the way, too, to help me review some things and do things over, is what happens when your daughter gets married. What was that? What? I didn't hear.
You said, Allison, I'm going to call you to review things.
Allison's
and
a
we,
divorce.
So unless you want a
family
divorce.
law.
Oh, divorce. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I got you. The names confused. Not Allison.
Erin, you mentioned Erin.
I'm going to announce it on WATD. Mark is sitting in the other room right now. No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that, but I got my names confused. But, you know, I think that, you know, my daughter got married, you know, those are some not concerns, but considerations I also want to make, you know, so if something does happen to me and Mark, and what happens if Casey and Dustin ended up getting divorced, or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
those are things that you have to think about, you know? So,
Yeah.
Allison, I hope I never have to see you. going back.
I mean, yeah.
Everybody says that.
I mean,
personally.
I'm in an interesting field because we can't really advertise, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can come on a show like this and talk to you guys, or whatever, but I can't go out and be like, hey, you should get a divorce, right? I mean, like, that's just so unethical. So it's like, it's an awkward thing, right? Like, I can't go out there and encourage you.
Yeah.
I want to encourage you guys to all
Sure.
stay married, actually,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
But
I'm
I'm there if
growth
things,
industry, though.
I'm there if things do go.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. I just went to Vegas for the first time, and every single billboard there is for a divorce attorney.
Oh, like a Britney Spears
Dang.
situation.
It's like divorce.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like getting, you know,
55-hour marriage.
Right.
I was like,
Yes.
wow, this is depressing.
Yes.
So Mel, we should actually let them sort of finish up too with the, I don't know how much time you have. You can see Tim, I cannot. Just make sure that they get their information out too.
Yep. Amy,
Sure.
any last thoughts?
Oh yeah. You know, last thoughts is just kind of get ahead of it as much as you can. If you're looking to, if you're dividing your assets because of divorce or because of a death, speak with a qualified realtor, as you're talking to one right now, and a real estate attorney to kind of ask those questions to get those papers in order so that we're not on the back end scrambling or potentially losing a buyer because we don't have our ducks in a row. So,
Right.
so get ahead of it.
Right. Amy, how can everyone get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can reach me at my direct number is 617-504-9151. That's 617-504-9151. I know you like it twice. So.
Yeah. Allison, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yes. So we're in Hingham, and my telephone number is 781-288-5400. That's 781-288-5400. And our website is www.allisonwalshlaw.com. Allison has 2 L's and 1 I.
I love that you say that.
I know.
Erin, how can everyone get in touch with you?
So my phone number is 781-733-3855. Again, that is 781-733-3855. My email is Erin@starboardlegal.com, and the website is starboardlegal.com.
Alyssa?
McNamaraFinancial.com or 781-834-2010. Do you want that again?
I do.
781-834-2010. McNamaraFinancial.com. And I would just say closing thoughts really quick,
Yeah.
like to echo what Amy said, is just get ahead of it. The earlier you can meet with
Yeah.
a professional and get your
It's
ducks
never
in the
too
row, the
early.
better. Don't be embarrassed
Yeah.
about it. We're talking about
Yeah,
stressful situations in
absolutely.
life.
Yeah.
There's never any, we're all professionals. There's never any judgment.
You're not the first
Like,
person going through it. You're
Yeah.
gonna be the
it's-
last.
It's the earlier you know, whatever,
Yeah.
the better. So,
Yeah.
and you can deal with it.
Final thoughts, Sharon? Anything? Okay.
I just want to thank all of, our guests today, and I'm really great having all of you there. Really blessed to
Thank you
been
so
part of
much.
this. You guys did awesome.
We're going to put this on our podcast app. You can go to Talk Real Estate Roundtable if you want to listen to this. And then we're going to get your show too. So we're going to post that. You can go to bostonconnect.com, find all of our contact information. Make sure to follow us on social media, Boston Connect Real Estate and McNamara Broker Team. And yeah. That's it.
Okay. Have a good, everybody. Have a good morning. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.